10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, but to the point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The Queen will not attend the state opening of Parliament today for the first time in 60 years.
Good morning. It is 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 10th of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Leading this morning, Buckingham Palace has confirmed that the Queen will not attend the state opening of Parliament today due to mobility problems. Prince Charles will instead give the speech on behalf of her.
The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has stated that he'll resign if he's fined over Beergate as his party prepares to hand over text logs and documents to Durham police.
The Prime Minister has vowed to strive night and day to level up Britain ahead of the state opening of Parliament. A legislative programme of 38 bills will be unveiled this morning, including proposals to drive up skills and do away with remaining EU red tape. Now, so there you are. We've got all these headlines today. How many of them do you believe, and why can't people just come clean? Who's telling the truth and who's not? Is that the face of an honourable man, or is it that the face of a man who knows he's not going to be prosecuted? Do you believe? Where's the one I was looking for? This is what honour looks like, Mr. Johnson. The thing about Keir Starmer is he's not very good at delivering speeches and things. I mean, so even if he was sincere and true, don't read it off paper. Just tell us the way it is. So it all looks so staged, so rehearsed, but he may well be an honourable man, and it may be a lesson for Boris Johnson, who, on the other hand, is he saying, I will strive night and day to level up Britain. Well, what's been keeping him so far? Let us know what you think on all of that. And the Queen, let's give us the Queen
Majesty, the
crying
Queen
out. They're saying, why can't people just tell us the truth? The Queen is very old, she's not mobile, and we're probably not going to see her at events again.
Well, don't say that. We've got to get through the Platinum Jubilee.
No, but what I'm saying is it's a bonus. If she turns up, it will be a bonus. But you're right. I mean, there must be serious questions.
Well, they're sort of, I'm sure there are, and they're just trying to preserve her, I suppose, until then. Look, we are the People's Channel. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Get in touch the usual ways. Email us, gbnews@gbnews.uk, or tweet us at gbnews.
So we're going to start today with the Queen. Buckingham Palace now confirming that she will not be attending the state opening of Parliament today. This is for the first time in 60 years, and they describe it as episodic mobility problems, which means that what they're trying to say...
Comes and goes,
not with her all the time.
Yeah, hence why it was a very late call from Buckingham Palace yesterday. Well, instead, Prince Charles and Prince William have jointly been given the authority to open Parliament on her behalf, with the Prince of Wales delivering the speech that lays out the government's legislative agenda.
Joining us now, we've got the royal broadcaster, Rafe Hadel Manku. Rafe, good to see you on this one. Look, what is going to be the new norm from here on in with Her Majesty? We hope she keeps well, but should we be expecting her now at everything she's supposed to attend? What's going to change?
Well, the Royal House had actually announced a couple of months ago that from now on, people should assume that Her Majesty will not be attending events that she was supposed to attend, and decisions will be made on the day. And that was quite a nice way of doing it, because they didn't want people to be disappointed by the Queen not turning up. So if they assume she won't be there and then she does turn up, it is a bonus, as you say.
So, OK, look, let's break this down into little bits. Episodic mobility means it comes and goes, her ability to move. Presumably, and we've heard rumours, not least from Christopher Biggins, who's a friend of the royals, that Her Majesty is now using a wheelchair. Now, we understand discreet inquiries have been made about the use of a wheelchair within the Palace of Westminster. Why wouldn't that have been an option for Her Majesty? Presumably, she could have done that, but she's decided that she'd rather her son and her grandson take the mantle instead.
The Queen isn't quite ready yet to be seen in public using aids, be they walking sticks or wheelchairs. Of course, people remember her mother, the Queen Mother, had 2 walking sticks, but also people remember Princess Margaret, her sister, who was in a wheelchair. I'm sure the time will come when Her Majesty will be happy to be seen in public like that. I'm not surprised at all that she's not attending. I assumed always that would be the case. It's a very tiring day, the state opening of Parliament. There's a lot of walking involved, and it finishes with having to ascend several stairs to the throne.
Crown, she wears the crown.
Well, she hasn't worn the crown on her last occasion, and I think that would be too much to expect her to have the heavy robes and the crown.
You know, it's interesting, any of you watching or listening today, my mother is 93, and she wouldn't be seen in public. I often say to her, Mum, why don't you get a wheelchair? Why don't you get a stick? Why don't you do this, that? And she'll say, I'm not being seen like an old person. I said, but Mum, you are an old person. And so it is obvious, and when you're under that scrutiny, there's a certain amount of dignity and pride that you have, and an image to maintain.
That's precisely it. And that's why, for example, during the Platinum Jubilee, when they have the service of Thanksgiving, the Queen will be entering through a side door rather than processing down the great sweep of the nave, as she would have done before, so that she'll be seated, and as they've said, to maintain her dignity. In fact, you know, it's not the first time this has happened. Queen Victoria was too old for her Diamond Jubilee to go up the steps of St Paul's, so she was in a carriage outside for the service.
Yeah, I mean, we should point out there'll be people watching in wheelchairs who'll be saying, well, hang on a minute, what's wrong with being seen in a wheelchair? There's nothing undignified about that.
They're not the Queen.
They're not the Queen, but I think it would send a really strong, positive message if she were to do that, and we'd all be very supportive, I'm sure. But just describe to us what we can expect to see then from Prince Charles. Presumably he won't be wearing a crown either, because he's not the monarch. But I was seeing Robert Hardman, the royal biographer, on the front of the Daily Mail this morning, talking about the start of a Charles regency, and effectively we're beginning to see that, aren't we?
Yes, this is a major step. So this is the 3rd time that the Queen hasn't opened Parliament. 59 years ago was the last time, 1959 and 1963 for the births of Prince Andrew and Prince Edward. And so it's on those last 2 occasions, it was the Lord Chancellor who actually read the speech. So Dominic Raab won't be doing it. It will be the Prince of Wales with Prince William as a Councillor of State. And a Councillors of State acts when the sovereign is incapacitated.
It's a great apprenticeship for William.
It's a great apprenticeship. And, of course, Prince Charles has had that apprenticeship too by sitting next to his mother for the last few years. So he's been with her for the speech for a few years, in one way anticipating this day would come eventually. And now it has come. And it is a big step up for him. And, yes, as you say, I think it won't be an official regency, but he'll be taking over much more of her roles.
Now, Isabel raised a very good point with the Jubilee ahead and things like Ascot or the Derby. The Queen's got no runners in the Derby, so sort of less reason to be there. Will these sort of events be casualties, these more social events?
Well, I think if Her Majesty has the choice, she'll go to Ascot and the Derby over her own service of Thanksgiving, even. So I would think those would be the last 2 that she would want to see, especially in her Platinum Jubilee year. And, of course, it's a very different state of affairs when it comes to those events, because you can easily come into those events in a wheelchair without anyone seeing you. So you may not actually have the full carriage procession that you have at Royal Ascot, perhaps. Yes. That might be a casualty, but I think Her Majesty will certainly be there.
Right, OK. Very
just in terms of the state opening of Parliament, and we talk about the opening of Parliament, people at home, we think, oh, Parliament's already open, mid-term. What's all the formality of it? Just to explain some of the sort of constitutional moments that we're seeing today and some of the rituals that we'll be witnessing, because it's a very ancient tradition, isn't it?
So it goes back hundreds of years, although in its current form it dates from the opening of the new Houses of Parliament after the Great Fire. So it was 1852 that the current ceremony that we're seeing actually started. But the state opening is essentially a new session of Parliament is beginning. So on April the 28th, the last Parliament was prorogued, and now we have the new Parliament coming in. And it's the one time that you have all three elements of Parliament together: the Sovereign, the Lords and the Commons. And they all coincide on this event. You have the Queen's speech that's read, which lays out the government's agenda for the year ahead. It's a very important affair.
And how much is the Queen briefed ahead of this? You know, obviously, it's very much the government's laws that she'll be reading out. I mean, she doesn't have any say, obviously, and hasn't done for a long time. It's a sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? The position she holds is a sort of...
It's a ceremonial function.
Ceremonial function, yeah. But would she, you know, perhaps change some of the language, or, you know, and how often in the past have we seen her reading things that we suspect she's not wanted to read out?
Yes, well... we know it's called the Queen's speech, but it's the government speech. The only speech that's really her speech is the Christmas Day message. That's one that she takes an active role in. It's written exclusively within the royal household. Essentially, she has to read what she's given. You know, she'll practice it beforehand, but you're not going to see.
But she wouldn't be rewriting or anything.
No, there'd be no rewriting done with that. We do know, for example, when Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister, the Queen wasn't entirely happy with all of Margaret Thatcher's policies, and so I'm sure there have been many occasions when her eyebrows were raised. But Her Majesty is a paragon of discretion, and I don't think we would ever be privy to those in the concerns she might have had.
At what stage do you think we will be given a realistic appraisal of Her Majesty's health? Episodic, what do they call mobility problems?
Yeah.
Why doesn't someone just say she's got a bad knee or her hips are gone or whatever?
There's always been this cloak of secrecy surrounding the health of the Queen. If you remember earlier this year when she went to hospital, they didn't even they kept flying the Royal Standard over Windsor Castle, even though she wasn't there, because they didn't want people to know she'd gone to hospital. It's a delicate balance. Everyone is entitled to privacy about their own personal health, and yet there is a public right to know about the sovereign, of course. And so, how do you strike that balance? But yes, I think being more forthcoming, because otherwise it just leads to speculation and people automatically assume the worst.
Yeah, OK. Rafe, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed. Rafe Heidel-Manku, he's a royal broadcaster, he's a royal commentator as well. He knows his stuff, and maybe we'll talk to you later in the programme as well. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. The time, 11 minutes past 6 o'clock. Your news sits like this on this Tuesday morning.
The MP for Bridgend, Jamie Wallace, is to appear in court charged with failing to stop after being involved in a car crash last year. The Conservative member and first openly transgender MP was arrested on suspicion of driving whilst unfit after a car hit a lamppost last November. He's also been charged with failing to report a collision, driving without care and leaving a vehicle in a dangerous position.
The government's planning to crack down on disruptive guerrilla protests used by campaign groups like Insulate Britain. The public order bill will be announced in the Queen's speech today, and it will outlaw tactics such as demonstrators gluing themselves to roads or locking on to public transport.
Consumers are tightening their belts amid the rising cost of living. The latest figures from the British Retail Consortium showed total sales fell last month for the first time in over a year.
3 out of 4 parents say they're worried about their children's mental health. A survey of 2,000 found nearly half say their child is now having problems with friendships and socialising post-pandemic.
And Sir Keir Starmer's party has rallied around him as Labour believes it can prove he didn't break lockdown rules. Sources say they've compiled WhatsApp chats and videos that show it was a work event. Well, the Labour leader said yesterday he'd do the right thing and resign if he was fined for the gathering in Durham in April 2021. So let us know your views on Sir Keir Starmer's position, whether or not you think it is a bit of a false honour that he's presenting to the nation, saying, I will quit if I'm charged, because, to be honest, his position would not really be sustainable given his position on Boris Johnson. So he was just trying to get ahead of the news curve, one suspects. Let us know what you think about that, and also whether or not you think that by joining up with Angela Rayner and saying both of them will go if they are fined, is that kind of putting pressure on the police? And is that...
Maybe he's got an inside track. Maybe he knows he's not going to be charged, so He's very happy to
prepared
say,
to do that.
I will resign.
But also, does he have a hotline to the police? I mean, he's former Director of Public Prosecutions. He knows that this is not really how you should conduct things.
But you know the main thing that stands out, I think, about Keir Starmer now? He doesn't look like a leader. He's not charismatic.
Why not? I mean, what does a leader look like? I don't know if there is a carbon...
He's wooden. He's a dullard.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter.
Oh, it so does matter. You can't say Bill Clinton was a dullard or
That's
Barack
true, but in a day
Obama was
where
or Tony
we're
Blair was.
appointing leaders of the free world based on the fact they used to host The Apprentice. We've got it all wrong if that's what we value.
That's what we do. Why else is
policy.
Boris Johnson Prime Minister?
No, well, yes, but I'm asking whether or not that is the correct way
I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying he's bad TV. He's
terrible
telly.
TV. I'll agree with that. Yeah, that
so
might not be the same thing.
How can he be elected?
Well, exactly. Let us know your thoughts this morning. I mean, they had 3 days of good publicity.
He's in charge of a socialist party and he's called Sir.
Well, yeah, it's an honour given for his service.
I mean, what's that got to do? You know, anybody working in a supermarket or anybody doing a real job out there digging roads?
He did a real job as Director of the Public Prosecutions.
I don't think he relates to working class people.
He's from a
I've always had
working
this
class
problem with the Labour Party. If you are, you know, who stands there? Angela Rayner, different type of person. Absolutely represents working class people, working class aspiration.
Do you think represent a good leader?
Her problem is, does she cut through to the middle classes, the people where Blair was a genius, was he was able to say to left-leaning sort of Gordon Brown, Gordon, we can't keep preaching the same solutions to the same people. We can't keep talking, just trying to please the trade unions. We've got to appeal to a wider audience out there who've got aspirations, and we've got to say you can trust the Labour Party to deliver them, and that's why he won those elections.
But of course the world's changed since then, and they're trying to appeal instead. Today it's all about the red walls, or indeed now the blue walls. But what a different picture it is today. And you know, just let us know what you think. Keir Starmer, leader or not? Does he have integrity or not? Do you think that he should go or not? Get in touch.
I actually think we've got quite a poor bunch of politicians and political leaders, and I think, you know, day after day they come on programs like this, and where is the charisma? Where is someone who will capture the public imagination? Let us know your view. I think a lot of them are very good, hard-working people, but the system dictates if they don't do the right things within their party, toe the party line or whatever, they're getting nowhere, so they sit frustrated on the back benches.
I've always thought Boris Johnson's got lots of charisma. I've always thought he'd be a brilliant dinner party guest. I'd love to sit next to him at a dinner. Boris Johnson. If it's about charisma, he's not lacking in that, for sure.
But I think there's lots of people. Jason Rees-Mogg, I think, is hilarious. I think Michael Gove is very, very interesting, got lots and lots of ability. But you could sit beside me and I can impersonate Boris Johnson throughout dinner.
You don't need to. You've got your own charisma. No, don't do it. That's not charisma, that's just...
It's an act. It's an affectation.
I think it's authentically Boris, if I'm honest. I think that's Boris's manner. And lots of people love it. Let us know your thoughts this morning. Get in touch. gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews.
OK, we're just pulling your leg, basically. We're just playing devil's
advocate. We're winding you up, getting those emails
But
coming.
I know a lot of you just wake up wanting to be angry this morning. So if you want to be angry and get your things off your chest, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at gbnews.
Now, following months of preliminary hearings, the Wagatha Christie case is finally set to go to trial.
So this is Colin Rooney and Rebecca Vardy, and they are going to face each other in court. Libel claims involving selling stories to the Sun newspaper.
Well, with both parties set for a head-to-head civil case, our reporter Ellie Costello has this report on all you need to know.
The Battle of the Wags is heading to trial. 3 years ago, in October 2019, Twitter exploded when Colleen Rooney, wife of Wayne Rooney, accused Rebecca Vardy, wife of Jamie Vardy, of leaking stories about her to the press. In order to catch the culprit, Colleen Rooney said she made up 3 stories and shared them to her personal Instagram story. One was about travelling to Mexico to find out about gender selection. One was about making return to TV. And another was about her basement flooding. All of these stories were shared with the Sun newspaper. Colleen Rooney knew that somebody was sharing her personal stories with the paper. She blocked everyone from viewing her stories apart from one account. She said that only one person viewed the stories, the content of which then ended up in The Sun. Colleen posted that now infamous line, "It's ... Rebecca Vardy's account." Colleen's investigative skills led to her being dubbed Wagatha Christie, a nod to the British crime novelist Agatha Christie. After the very public accusation, Rebecca Vardy, who was heavily pregnant at the time, denied any involvement. Rebecca Vardy is now suing Colleen Rooney for libel. Legal costs of the preliminary hearings have already cost more than £400,000 on each side. The trial at the Royal Courts of Justice is scheduled to last for 6 days. Ellie Costello, GB News.
Big interest in that and what is going to be said and what's going to be revealed over the next few days.
Yeah, indeed. Look, coming up, we'll be bringing you the exclusive details of one of the largest payouts by a council for sexual abuse in UK history. But first of all, here's your forecast.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A cloudy and damp start for some across England and Wales, but that cloud and rain will clear through the morning, replaced by sunny spells, but also some fairly lively showers in the north. At the moment, we've got a couple of areas of low pressure to the north and northwest of the UK. They've been sending weather fronts in from the northwest. It was a wet day yesterday for Scotland and Northern Ireland. That rain is now across central and southern parts of England, but really is a weakening feature. So the rain more or less petering out, very little as the front clears East Anglia and the southeast. Sunny spells then follow, and for the south and southeast, mostly it's just a fine afternoon with warm sunshine, 20-21 Celsius possible towards the southeast. But scattered showers for parts of Wales and northern England, and some very lively downpours for Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it will feel cooler, 15 to 17 Celsius here. And those showers turning into longer spells of rain, I think, through the evening across western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well. So an unsettled night to come for Scotland, for Northern England, Northern Ireland. Drier and clearer for a time further south, but even in the south we'll see clouds thickening, 12 Celsius at dawn on Wednesday, but also some outbreaks of rain starting to emerge towards the southwest. And this area of rain is going to slowly spread across some southern parts of England, into the Midlands perhaps, as well as South Wales by the afternoon. A lot of uncertainty about the track of the rainfall, so some error bars concerning its position. Wouldn't take the graphics too literally at this point, but nevertheless some fairly useful rainfall potentially for southern parts of England and Wales. Scotland, Northern England, Northern Ireland keep the sunny spells and showers, and it's a similar picture here on Thursday and Friday, turning drier and brighter meanwhile further south, and a fine weekend for many.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's two questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Thanks for your feedback this morning on Keir Starmer. Anthony says, good morning, Anthony. We all know what happened to Boris and Keir. We can make our own minds up. They should both stop wasting police time and money. Certainly the police have much more important things to investigate.
Roger echoes that. He says, why don't we just get on with solving the country's most serious problems? And lots of people saying, if you're asking why Boris Johnson has been levelling up the country, it's because everybody's been talking about Partygate for the last 3 months. Carl says, if he really was an honourable man, he'd not be putting Durham Police in such a difficult position. His speech yesterday was prejudicial and could undermine the process. For me, a greater offence than the actual offence of eating curry and drinking beer, especially coming from the former head of the CPS.
Exactly. SIP says, that's a good name, SIP, isn't it? S-I-P-P.
SIP says. It sounds.
Isn't there a pension called a SIP?
You'd know more.
It is. There's a certain type of pension which is called a SIP.
Okay.
SIP says, if this, meaning Keir Starmer, is a man of integrity, what does a slippery hypocrite look like?
Wow. I mean, Michael says, personally, I think Lisa Nandy will do a great job. Lots of people are saying who would be the successor, and Lisa Nandy's name does come up a lot. And, you know, are we talking about that? Could we see a leadership race within the Labour Party soon, just as we've been speculating and discussing who would succeed Boris Johnson if he were to resign?
Well, yes, she did warn Keir Starmer. She did say to him, lay off the whole decency, man of principle type thing with Boris Johnson. And you wonder why. There it is, it's come back to bite. But she stands to inherit the earth, doesn't she? Because if Angela Rayner has to stand down as well with Starmer, so it's an open goal for her. Still to come this morning with the time at 25 minutes past 6.
Travel chaos at airports across the country. We'll be in Birmingham just before 7 o'clock to find out what's to blame for the latest delays.
Yeah, more delays. Well, I'm going to the airport today.
Well, good luck with that.
Yeah, exactly. Also coming up in the next hour, heating versus eating. As the cost of living crisis continues with many people skipping meals to save money, we're going to be talking to a consumer expert who shares her thoughts on beating the squeeze. And lots of you up and at 'em already this morning, getting in touch with us. Keep those coming in if you can. Join in our discussions. We are the People's Channel. GBViews at gbnews.uk or tweet us at GBnews. Very good. Well, now, more than £108 million has been paid out by a compensation scheme for people who were abused in children's homes run by Lambeth Council. That's in South London, and we can exclusively reveal that this morning. Well, it's believed to be one of the largest payouts by a council for sexual abuse in UK history. And Alice Porter has been speaking to some of the victims. A warning, though, some viewers may find her report distressing.
My house parent said to me, always remember that you're nothing here.
Sandra Fearon was at Shirley Oaks for 5 years in the 1960s and was repeatedly sexually abused.
He told me to lie on this sort of hospital couch and then he raped me. And I was just screaming and sobbing. The pain was just dreadful. He held me down and that went on for 2 years.
So you've received one of the largest payouts in compensation. What kind of difference has that made to your life?
The compensation actually doesn't take the pain away, but it does help to maybe make my future a bit more secure. And you've been recognised that it happened. We're believed, and that is just so important to me.
Sandra is one of 2,236 people who have applied to the Lambeth redress scheme for compensation. Applicants have to provide evidence of their abuse. Shane Donnelly suffered physical, sexual and racist abuse at Shirley Oaks. He's waited 2 years for compensation.
People have received far less for the same abuse because they're black. Felt almost sort of like victimised all over again. We had to go through psychiatrists, and the psychiatrists used our care files, which was written by our perpetrators. I know people who, they got so ill and stressed that they just took the lowest offer.
Survivors are being supported by Raymond Stevenson, who also went to Shirley Oaks. He's been gathering evidence from victims for 7 years and campaigned for them to receive compensation.
Without the evidence we've collated, there wouldn't be any compensation. It's really just proving people were in the cottage, in the home, that the paedophile was working there, and then getting supporting evidence and other victims who were also abused by the same person.
Lambeth Council has apologised for the abuse committed against children at the borough's children's homes. They say their redress scheme is the first of its kind in the country and includes compensation to victims and survivors where race was an aggravating feature in the abuse. Only 6 men have been convicted since the 1990s in connection with abuse in the care homes. For Shane and Sandra, apologies are not enough.
They make a big thing of wanting to change the names of roads because of slavery, but they've discriminated against black survivors who were abused by them as a council.
People have got away with it. There's lies up till this day. That's what I'd like to see, a criminal investigation.
Alice Porter, GB News.
I know that makes tough viewing, and we were just sitting talking there, is that people who inflict harm on children and damage them for the rest of their lives into their adult lives, unbelievable. We know what our solution would be. Tell us what your solution would be at GB News. The time, 6:30 exactly.
Stay with us after the break. Norman Baker and Kate Hardcastle are going to take us through your Tuesday morning newspapers. That's straight after this.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question.
That's 2 questions, actually. That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Very warm welcome back. Let's bring you up to date on the latest headlines.
The Prince of Wales will read the Queen's speech for the first time as Her Majesty experiences mobility problems. It will be the first time the Queen has missed the state opening of Parliament in 60 years. The Duke of Cambridge will also be in attendance.
The first group of illegal migrants will find out this week whether they'll be sent to Rwanda as part of the government's latest deportation plans. The Home Office says those who've crossed the channel in small boats are among those who'll be notified, with first flights expected in the coming months.
The government's planning to crack down on disruptive guerrilla protests used by campaign groups like Insulate Britain. The public order bill will be announced by the Queen. No, not by the Queen, because she's not there. It's in the Queen's speech, though, which will be read by Prince Charles, and will outlaw tactics like what you're seeing here, gluing yourself to the road or to public transport.
A new study's found a second COVID booster gives immunity that is over and above that offered by just one. Researchers at Southampton University say 2 weeks after a fourth vaccine, patients' antibodies and T-cells rose higher than they were after a third.
The Wagatha Christie trial is set to begin later today. The high-profile libel battle is between Jamie Vardy's wife, Rebecca Vardy, and Wayne Rooney's wife, Colleen Rooney. Mrs. Rooney accused Mrs. Vardy of leaking false stories about her private life to the media in October 2019 after she said she carried out a month-long sting operation.
OK, it's time to go through your Tuesday morning newspapers. We're joined this morning by the consumer expert, Kate Hardcastle, and the former minister turned royal author, Norman Baker. Very warm welcome to both of you. Kate, let's start with you. Sir Keir Starmer on about 50-60% of the papers this morning, following on from his claims yesterday that he was going to show the Prime Minister what integrity looked like. What do you make of it, and what does the Mirror make of it on their front page?
The Mirror is obviously very sympathetic to the speech, a 9-minute speech. I think we've got this very challenging situation because we know that agonising decisions, agonising situations were the reality for so many of us throughout that period. And it is absolutely, I completely understand why anyone who've had to go through such challenging situations, losing family members and not being with them, would want to see this brought to account and absolute clarity on what leaders and leaders of the opposition were doing at that time. That said, on an international scale, we do look like a country that's lost the plot. We are constantly discussing whether or not leaders, opposition leaders, have been eating curries, eating cake, eating whatever else, playing some board games, I don't know. And we're losing focus. We have a cost of living crisis. We have got a challenging time coming up in the autumn too. I mean,
so what's the solution? We ignore it. I mean, I think Pippa Crerar has got this interview, an exclusive with Starmer inside the Mirror today, and he's running through his defence, saying they're going to supply this document to Durham Police, which will show that work was ongoing whilst he was eating this curry.
That's right.
OK, we may feel frustrated that there are more important things to talk about, but what's the answer? We just ignore it?
No, I just feel that I am sure a lot of your viewers feel the same, and I think you've had that tweet in this morning as well, that this is really taking over the agenda, and that's the issue, isn't it? We should have leaders in which we should trust. We should have leaders who set rules to follow and lead by example, but at the same time, months and months and months of focus have been moved off topical issues that really affect
I get that, but we've still got to resolve this. So you've got one guy who the leader of the opposition believes is lying through his teeth and should be prosecuted and should do the noble thing and resign. Then it turns to him and says, oh, well, put your money where your mouth is. You're now accused of the same thing. I mean, it is called politics.
Of course it is, and it's spin, and it's all of the other things as well. All I'm saying, Eamonn, is imagine you're a small business owner and your life's been wrecked not only by maybe some Brexit regulations, but then 2 years of on and off lockdown.
Yeah, I get that, but this still has to be resolved.
It has to be resolved, but if it then takes 3 months to do, which, by the way, if you're in a business, nothing would take that long, it is incredibly frustrating to see this dominate the front page
I want to bring in Norman Baker, because let's not forget, you were the man who came out squeaky clean out of all of the MPs during the expenses scandal, not a single fiddled expenses, and you know what integrity looks like. Do you see integrity in the eyes of Sir Keir Starmer, or the fact that Angela Rayner was there, the fact that beers were bought en masse for a pre-organised event, does that make it
He's got nothing.
lies?
What else can he do? It's a roll of the dice, surely, Norman. He's if he does get the fixed penalty, he's gambling that he doesn't get one.
Look,
he's going to look great.
Look, gambling is right, and I agree, actually, with Kate, that isn't the most important issue, but we are where we are, and it has to be sorted out. The fact of the matter is that because he challenged the Prime Minister, he's got to be held to the same standard himself, and therefore politically, apart from anything else, he had to take the action he did yesterday, which is to say, I will resign if I'm found guilty. But this is raising the stakes in a kind of poker game, because let's say he isn't found guilty and the police issue no fixed penalty notice. That leaves the Prime Minister looking in a very poor position where he's not taken the same position himself, and he looks even more scuzzy than he has done to date. If, however, Keir Starmer does resign because there is a fixed penalty notice issued, then where's that leave the Prime Minister who's had one issued and not resigned? So I think in some ways, both ways, Keir Starmer wins, although wins in inverted commas, because in one of the situations he loses his job.
Is he indirectly interfering with a police investigation?
Yeah, undermining.
I don't think so. I don't think so. What I do think about the police is they need to get a move on with this. I mean, this has gone on for a very long time, and we've heard that there may be more instances of fines issued in respect to Downing Street. Well, I don't know how long the police take to investigate these matters, but it's been going on months and months and months. It seems to be a rather an open and shut case. I mean, there's an offence being committed, or there hasn't been. And we really ought to get this thing wrapped up by the police, both in terms of the Met Police and the Prime Minister and the Durham Police, you know, within frankly, a few days. It really shouldn't be dragging on. There's no reason for it to drag on.
So what if he doesn't get the fixed penalty notice? Where does this leave Boris Johnson?
It leaves him looking even more vulnerable and even more disreputable, frankly, than he has done to date. And by the way, although I totally agree with Kate that the issue has been to some extent about the Prime Minister behaving in a way that other people didn't, and people feel very strongly about that, I think the other issue, frankly, is he's lied to Parliament. And as a former parliamentarian, that's the thing that worries me. You cannot have ministers lying to Parliament.
But
Under the
has
ministerial
Keir
code.
Starmer not lied to Parliament in the sense that, you know, he said he's done nothing wrong, but yet it's been proven that Angela Rayner was there and that this was a large gathering? I mean, you know...
Well, he'll have to respond to that if that's proven to be the case. But, I mean, what the Prime Minister said, for example, without going into the nitty-gritty too far, is that he wasn't at parties and he was. So, I mean, I think there's more open and shut in terms of the Prime Minister's statements to the House. But, you know, let's get the police sorting this out once and for all, independently, analytically, and get the whole thing put to bed within a couple of weeks.
And just before we move on to the next story, who would you see as his successor if he does go? Lisa Nandy being touted as a possible...
Well, Rachel Reeves, Lisa Nandy, but there's not a huge choice. I mean, Andy Burnham is probably the choice of people, but he's not even in Parliament. He's in Manchester.
Kate, let's go to the cost of living crisis. Front page of the Daily Express, and you've got the Prime Minister saying, I will strive night and day to level up Britain. We've heard it all before, have we not?
Yeah, I was going to say too much, too little, too late. The reality has struck and households are struggling, and we're heading up to this incredibly challenging situation in autumn, and I don't say that to be a scaremonger, but that's a reality with another fuel cap increase to come in. Inflation is showing no signs of exacerbating at all. So we are in this reality of households do not know how they are going to get through. And there is no clarity in any of the messaging here on the front of the Express on how it's going to work.
What makes me angry about this headline is that they had their chance with the spring budget, the mini statement, and nothing happened. All the opportunities to do it, and they can talk about, we've done this, we've done that. They've done very little at the end of the day. And people not only can't afford things, but they are frightened about the future.
The emotional impact is so severe as well. People having to deal with that reality day in, day out after the 2 years we've been through. That's what we can't forget here. Every country pretty much is going through a period of cost of living crisis, particularly pertaining to the fact we've been through the pandemic. Of course, economics show that that's the scale, but it's also a catalyst for change. Other territories are saying, right, OK, we've got to reinvest. This is the time to do it. We've got to put the cash in here. We've got to make sure people feel comfortable to spend, because spending will help the economy thrive. And we've got to make sure the jobs are out there. Just take any measure. The houses they were meant to build, 300,000 houses, new houses. I think we've got 216. It isn't where we need to be.
But there's no money in the cupboard, is there?
Well, there could be money in the cupboard. It could be a windfall tax on the energy companies for a start, because they're making absolute fortune.
Right, Norman. So why isn't there? I mean, we will ask this question all the time, and we're told that it will put them off investing in the future, whatever. But I always look, they've got to go where the resources are, where the oil is, whatever. So they can't go anywhere else.
No, it puts them off investing. I mean, that's a ludicrous argument for people to make.
But they're already disproportionately taxed as a sector, more than any other sector in industry, because of this reason. And they also would argue that, I think it was 2 years ago, I think BP posted record losses. So, you know, whatever they're recouping
Do you not
year...
think people, ordinary citizens, aren't disproportionately taxed?
No, but, well, not...
Well, you know, so I think they can afford to be more disproportionately taxed than the
BP
rest
and Shell are not short of money. I mean, they're rolling in it. They've even said themselves they're rolling in it. You've also got a situation where, although it's been drawn to the Chancellor's attention, tax loopholes for the very, very, very rich in this country have not been closed. They're making quite a lot of money, thank you very much, at the moment. So, of course, there's limited money in the Treasury, but there are places they can go to find it. And in the meantime, as Kate says, people are suffering out there. Give you an example of what might happen coming up shortly. Every year, automatically, there is a rise in rail fares based on the RPI rate in the summer. Now, unless the government does something about that, rail fares will go up 10%. The next rise. I mean, we can't have this sort of thing going on.
Yeah, no one will be using trains. Everybody in cars.
Meanwhile, the Duke of Sussex yesterday launched a sustainable travel initiative. You couldn't make it up, could you? So tell us more about this. This is the front page of the Daily Telegraph.
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, you couldn't make it up because, you know, of all the people in the world, Prince Harry is probably in the top 1% for carbon emissions because aviation is far and away the most polluting activity you could engage in. As an individual.
He's also got a big platform and a platform from which he can encourage people.
Yes, but he can't encourage people who's being hypocritical himself.
So, really, do you think that he has to live a carbon-neutral life to say to people that they need to try and be green?
I think he took 4 private jets in 11 days.
There are far worse examples out there. I think
No, but he
really
can't preach. I'm sorry. The hypocrisy meter just goes off the scale
so
with
it's
this
better that
one.
he doesn't acknowledge that there's a problem and raise the subject.
Get his backside off private jets.
No, he's an
Him
easy
and her.
target. He really is an easy target. I think he's just being put up there as a target. That's not fair. There are so
that he
many
doesn't
worse
use
culprits.
private jets?
No, I'm not saying... I have no idea.
But he
if it's
does. We all
travel
have an idea.
schedule.
And then he can sit and tell everybody else, don't get on your Jet 2 or your TUI plane or whatever. Meanwhile, I'll scoot around the world in a private jet.
So we can never discuss anything that we have fallen foul of our Simon.
Well, we can take a vote on it. You can be gullible and listen to him. You can be gullible and listen to him. But it makes me throw up personally. Norman?
Well, I mean, I'm afraid Prince Charles did the same. I mean, Prince Charles also takes private jets, as did Prince Andrew. And there is a difficulty if you're going to lecture the world about the climate, and Prince Charles actually does believe in the climate and tackling climate change.
So does
I know
Harry.
he does. I think Harry does.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is they undermine their own case by their own behaviour. And I'm sorry, all they need to do is take commercial flights. If they want to go around the world, take commercial flights, not private jets.
OK, simple. Let's talk about protesters, Kate. Now, this is the set to be announced in the Queen's speech today, new powers under the Public Order Bill. How do you clamp down on guerrilla protesting without curbing the basic right to protest? And there are people who really worry that this is infringing British citizens' liberty.
And that's the dilemma that's been discussed in The Guardian today, and I don't think there's a resolution out of it either. They've certainly been keen to highlight Priti Patel saying that we will give the police the powers they need to clamp down on this outrageous behaviour, and showing her having a demonstration of being cuffed and the type of procedure that would be put in place. Obviously, a lot of this inflammatory because it's come through recent challenges where we've seen the Extinction Rebellion, when I can speak type, going out there and causing absolute chaos for people, getting in the way of people trying to get to work. And, of course, there's a lot of sympathy and empathy for the fact that people should be able to get about their daily business. But at the same time, we need to be able to have that freedom of opportunity to go out and bring focus to things that don't get discussed. How many debates have been brought about because people have gone out there and made it their passion to be able to go out and bring it to attention? So there is no resolution in this, and it'll be interesting to hear what's been said today.
OK, but you're the one who's saying something's got to be done about our bills, our cost of living crisis, our energy bills and whatever. Well and good, but now's not the time to be protesting about fuel and how we extract it, or not. I just put it to you.
Because there's a direct suggestion that if we need to curb bills, we can't then take forward progressive steps in being better businesses. I wholeheartedly agree. You can do both.
OK.
And Norman, I just want to get your take on all this because, I mean, we touched on the fact you're a former MP, former member of the Lib Dem
Former Home Office Minister, actually.
Coalition, indeed, yes, in government. But obviously there's a bit of a resurgence of your former party. Still a member of the party? Or?
Yes.
Yeah, so the Lib Dems
Notwithstanding my...
did really well in the local elections last week. They're talking about the blue wall being smashed down. Where do the Lib Dems stand on these particular powers when it comes to public order?
I think the Lib Dems are very sceptical about them, as indeed are members of the House of Lords, because these powers that are coming in the Queen's speech, apparently, were thrown out by the House of Lords earlier this year on a cross-party basis, because there is a difficulty if you're going to argue that we are a democratic country, that we're different from Putin's Russia, where they've been clamping down on demonstrations. In this country, the right to demonstrate is a fundamental right. And many advances in law in this country have come about from public demonstrations. So I'm very wary about the fact that demonstrations will be curbed because the government of the day doesn't like them. Now, I'm not in favour personally of people blocking transport and shutting down motorways and so on. I think that's unwise. But I think it's even more unwise to start telling people what they can and cannot do in terms of demonstrations. That's a very slippery slope.
Guys, what do we think about the Queen today? I mean, obviously people, concerned about her health and, she won't be there to deliver the Queen's speech today. Norman, front page of The Sun says,
yes,
crowning out.
Yeah, not our best pun, actually, but look, I mean, let's give her a break. She's 96 and she's not been very well. I mean, and if she wants to take a freebie on this because she's not very well, that's fine by me. And if Charles can turn up and give the speech, well, to be perfectly honest with you, it's not the greatest action that the Queen can take anyway, because she's got to read out a list of bills she probably doesn't agree with, written for her by the government. I mean, it's not a great act, is it?
You say give her a break. I haven't read any criticism, to be fair, of her bowing out of tomorrow. I have to say, though, you are the first person to call this Charles Regency. You mentioned it a few weeks ago on this programme, and you said we're beginning to see this. Yeah. And now it's being widely reported. Do you think this is the way it's going to go now?
Yes, I mean, officially, Charles and one or two others are councillors in state, I think the term is, where the Queen can delegate the responsibility to them to undertake her duties. And as I say, she is 96, and Charles will presumably be king at some point in the not-too-distant future. So, let him have a go now if he wants to.
Do you think a regency, Kate, is more palatable?
You love that word, don't you? It's as if you've gone back to A-level history,
Okay, all right.
Regency.
But I'm just... Or versus an abdication. I don't see why there's a problem with abdication. We've seen it happening in Spain. We've seen it happening in the Netherlands. Normally, you'll know other countries where they've had them.
Retirement,
but we're not into it here. We're not into it. It's almost... You can't say it. You're anti-monarchy.
We're not into it.
But is a regency more acceptable?
The Queen has made it that we're not into it because she says she will just keep on working. But I think if Mom was wise, she would sit in and watch Loose Women during the day or something, just to pass.
You're highly recommending that programme, are you?
Yeah, I'm just saying.
On a Monday.
Maybe she'd watch you, Eamonn, now.
We're going to have a very interesting period of change, aren't we? There was certainly noise over the weekend in the press about the idea that William will be called William, and those changes in terms of some of the protocols, and I think it's going to be a really interesting time. But we mustn't ever forget just how that monarchy has put us on the world stage and really given us some exceptional opportunities as well.
But also, as a business person, I mean, it's called The Firm. And, now we're seeing various managers in the firm, as you say.
It's like Succession.
Succession. It is. It's like Succession.
It has a touch, doesn't it? And I think that's it. When you start to hear the different voices, it's not always blended, it's not always harmonised, and that's what we've heard over the last year or so.
Yeah, but like you say, Isabel, I can't see any problem with different people in different roles. And as you say, let's not underestimate just what the monarchy means to this country abroad. I mean, I do laugh.
Soft power.
I do laugh when people say, "Oh, let's get rid of it," whatever. I sort of think, so what would all the tourists do? What are they coming to London for?
Absolutely. If you go and see any representation of the UK internationally, you can bet your pound it's going to have a crown, it's going to have that element to it. Yeah. It's a big part of our makeup and our history. It doesn't mean it can't evolve and move forward. It just is about respecting what was.
Sadiq Khan's out in New York at the moment, trying to get people to come and visit London. And,
I could have done that gig.
What?
I could have done that gig.
You could, yeah. I don't know if he's pushing the West End or whatever, but surely everything the Royals and the Jubilee this year,
that will be
that has to be a massive thing. Yeah. Apparently we've lost about $2.5 billion from America alone in terms of lost tourism.
Oh, we're going to come onto the high street later because it's going to be mentioned today, but we've got to talk about the shopping and just how important it is.
Give us a taster, give us a taster.
Well, it's coming up in the Queen's speech, and apparently, you know, we've got all the answers now, Eamonn. I remember discussing this with you over a decade ago.
Are these your answers?
Pretty much, but, you know, it's not just that. It's like the short-termism of it and the fact that we're still not identifying that every single place across the UK has got history, got legacy, got its own DNA. You can't have a blanket one-size-fits-all.
OK, hold that thought. And we'll be discussing that in 40 minutes' time when Norman and Kate come back again. For the moment, guys, thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
OK, the time is 6:52. We're going to bring you up to date with the latest headlines. And as we were just discussing, the Prince of Wales is to read the Queen's speech for the first time as Her Majesty experiences so-called mobility problems. It will be the first time the Queen has missed the state opening of Parliament in almost 60 years. And the Duke of Cambridge will also be at the ceremony.
Consumers are tightening their belts amidst the rising cost of living. Latest figures from the British Retail Consortium show total sales fell last month for the first time in over a year.
The Mayor of London has met with Hillary Clinton in New York on his tour to boost London's tourism and tech industries. Sadiq Khan attended a meeting with the former US presidential hopeful to discuss issues facing the capital, as well as recovery from the coronavirus pandemic.
He's wasting his time there because Hillary is ours. Hillary is the Chancellor of Queen's University in Belfast, and her and Bill have a suite in the Europa Hotel called the Clinton Suite. So if you want to stay, go to the Europa Hotel, the most bombed hotel in the world, and go and ask for the Clinton Suite.
Yeah, exactly. He's drumming up
Goodness knows what went on in there.
UK PLO, let's not go there.
Do you know, I remember one night going down Great Victoria Street in Belfast, and there's a tree planted in my name, right? Which was broken. Someone's chopped it down.
So many gags.
And then they peed all over it, right?
Gosh,
so it was anyway, so I was inspecting the remnants of my tree, and I looked across the road and there was all this kerfuffle going on and flash bulbs and all sorts of things. And it was Bill Clinton. He just got out of a car and there he was sauntering in, going into the Clinton Suite.
How funny.
Where
he
obviously doesn't even have to pay for it in there. But he's have you ever met him, Norman?
I have. An amazing charisma, actually.
Incredible.
I mean, he comes
film star.
He comes in the room and he fills the room with charisma. It's quite extraordinary.
But Hillary apparently the same, and you loved it when you met her. Great interview.
Hillary.
Bill Clinton's warm-up act.
You're what?
I was Bill Clinton's warm-up.
Please give us context.
His woman.
Context.
Warm up.
What they said.
That would be an exclusive, wouldn't it?
I interviewed Monica Lewinsky once, and she sarcastically said to me, "Why, have you met the president?" I said, "Yes, I have." I said, "But unlike you, I only shook his hand." So she had a good sense of humour about all of that.
So you were his warm-up act in what context?
You're asking.
We had a big entrepreneurial conference a few years ago, and the funny and very true story, the front row in this auditorium of thousands of people was empty, and I didn't understand why. And then just before, because we weren't allowed to announce what time he was going on stage because of protocol and security, the front row started filling up with very recognisable faces, and I realised they weren't there for me. But for a moment, there was a crossover, and they did turn up for me. That was, Sting and...
Did you fancy him?
No.
You didn't find him charismatic?
I did, but that doesn't mean I fancy him. I've got a very...
No, I'm asking. Even I fancied him.
You did.
Yeah, he's very charismatic.
Music's there to start with, it's a big thing.
Did he play the sax?
He didn't on stage. I don't know if he did later, but it wasn't when I was around.
He's a very talented musician. Right, we're going to go to the break. We're going to go to the break, and then when we come back, we're going to be talking about queues at airports. Why are they happening yet again after this?
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A cloudy and damp start for some across England and Wales, but that cloud and rain will clear through the morning, replaced by sunny spells, but also some fairly lively showers in the north. At the moment, we've got a couple of areas of low pressure to the north and northwest of the UK. They've been sending weather fronts in from the northwest. It was a wet day yesterday for Scotland and Northern Ireland. That rain is now across central and southern parts of England, but really is a weakening feature. So the rain more or less petering out, very little as the front clears East Anglia and the southeast. Sunny spells then follow, and for the south and southeast, mostly it's just a fine afternoon with warm sunshine, 20-21 Celsius possible towards the southeast. But scattered showers for parts of Wales and northern England, and some very lively downpours for Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it will feel cooler, 15 to 17 Celsius here. And those showers turning into longer spells of rain, I think, through the evening across western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well. So an unsettled night to come for Scotland, for Northern England, Northern Ireland. Drier and clearer for a time further south, but even in the south we'll see clouds thickening, 12 Celsius at dawn on Wednesday, but also some outbreaks of rain starting to emerge towards the southwest. And this area of rain is going to slowly spread across some southern parts of England, into the Midlands perhaps, as well as South Wales by the afternoon. A lot of uncertainty about the track of the rainfall, so some error bars concerning its position. Wouldn't take the graphics too literally at this point, but nevertheless some fairly useful rainfall potentially for southern parts of England and Wales. Scotland, Northern England, Northern Ireland keep the sunny spells and showers, and it's a similar picture here on Thursday and Friday, turning drier and brighter meanwhile further south, and a fine weekend for many.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The Queen will not attend the state opening of Parliament for the first time in almost 60 years.
A very good morning to you. It is 7 o'clock on this Tuesday, the 10th of May. You're tuned in to Breakfast in GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Buckingham Palace has confirmed that the Queen will not attend the state opening of Parliament due to episodic mobility problems. Prince Charles will instead give the speech on behalf of the monarch.
The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has stated that he will resign if he's fined over Beergate, as his party prepares to hand over text logs and documents to Durham police.
The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has vowed to strive night and day to level up Britain ahead of the state opening of Parliament. A legislative programme of 38 bills will be unveiled this morning, including proposals to drive up skills and do away with remaining EU red tape.
And be good and join in with everything we're talking about today. We love to hear from you. GB Views at GB.
They're stacking up already. Look at all these emails.
They are. And also you can tweet at GB News as well. So anything you'd like to say about the Queen, express your concerns, or, you know, is it time? Is the firm really a firm? And, you know, should Will have a role in it, Charles have a role in it, the Queen still be Queen? Let us know your views on all of that. And also, Keir Starmer, Bob Monkhouse used to say, if you can fake sincerity, you've got it made. Did he fake it, or is it real? Let us know.
So our top story this hour, and Buckingham Palace confirmed last night that the Queen would not be attending the state opening of Parliament today for the first time in almost 60 years due to what they described as episodic mobility problems.
OK, so in her place you've got Prince Charles, you've got Prince William. They will jointly be given the authority to open Parliament on the Queen's behalf, with the Prince of Wales delivering her speech that lays out the government's agenda.
So in total, 38 bills will be unveiled, with the Prime Minister vowing to strive day and night to level up Britain. So to discuss all of this, now is our political correspondent, Tom Harwood.
Here's my point, right? He'll strive day and night to level up Britain. They had a chance with their spring budget, hadn't they?
They did, certainly, although a spring budget is looking at sort of how everything is financed. That's a big statement of fiscal... It's a fiscal event that lays out money given to various places. Now, a Queen's speech laying out the legislative agenda as it does, a multi-year legislative agenda in some points, and the Prime Minister saying a lot of this stuff is not going to be done in a year, potentially hinting towards the need that he might need to stay on a little bit longer. Perhaps that talks more to politics than legislation. However, this certainly is about how that money is going to be applied. And in many ways, there are also things to do with levelling up and things to do with regulatory reform that don't cost money, but do require political will and legislative changes. So there's a big, expansive situation that we're going to see in Parliament today. 38 bills, as you mentioned, a number of them to do with regulatory changes and to do with Brexit implementation, but also there are those big hopes for levelling up.
You know, so many people would have had so many hopes and aspirations post-Brexit. Are they going to realise these? Are they at last going to see this is the benefit, this is the difference, not being in the European Union?
Well, I think there's not going to be one big moment that shows suddenly there's a land of milk and honey on the horizon. Brexit has always been a process rather than an event. But there have been already some differences that have been made. For example, the UK chose not to be in the EU's medicines regulator and had an independent procurement of vaccines. Now, the government argues that that meant we had a faster vaccine rollout than the European Union. But there are some other areas looking at, for example, the way we regulate our companies. Is there a way we can do that in a more streamlined way that fosters economic growth as we emerge from these global financial problems that we're suffering under? Not only COVID, but also, of course, sky-high inflation.
So
and the
cut the red tape and do it our way.
So-called bonfire of EU laws, the Super 7 of Brexit freedoms. Also, I noticed in the list of what to expect from the Queen's speech today was this Bill of Rights, which is to replace the Human Rights Act, which lots of Brexiteers really feel like is the remaining remnant of being stuck in the EU.
That certainly is a big hope. And, of course, it's what David Cameron used to speak about a long time ago, a British Bill of Rights trying to turn human rights away from something that sort of people view in a negative sense that is
Can't
deployed...
deport foreign nationals.
Exactly. There seem to be more rights for murderers than for ordinary people. And viewing them in a way that actually the original Bill of Rights back in 1688-89 was something that was incredibly positive. It was about the freeborn rights of people of the United Kingdom, or of England back then. And indeed, it's something that the Americans took on in their constitution and are incredibly proud of as well. So potentially fostering a rights culture has been spoken about for a long time, although, of course, this won't go as far as, for example, leaving the European Court of Human Rights, which is an international body not related to the EU that the UK remains a member of.
And among the powers being announced today would be this public order bill, which would enable protesters and things to be arrested and dealt with better. Of course, the challenge with that is how authorities clamp down on so-called guerrilla protesters like Insulate Britain Extinction Rebellion without looking like Russia, who won't allow people to protest against the government of the day.
Certainly, and this is something that the government has struggled before. Similar proposals were defeated in Parliament last year, but this being part of the Queen's speech, this being kicking off the legislative agenda, kicking off the session, hopefully will allow the government to try and set out their agenda in a way that may convince more people, in a way that protects people's rights to protest in specific ways, but doesn't protect people's rights to damage other people's property. That's not a right that I think many people would view people have, or to disrupt national important infrastructure.
Talking about agendas, our viewers and listeners are awash with conspiracy theories over Keir Starmer. They just don't buy it. And the theory out there is, with all his legal connections and everything, he has got a heads up that there ain't no fixed penalty notice coming his way, therefore he has nothing to lose. Or is this one big risky roll of the dice?
In politics, it's always cock up and never conspiracy.
Okay.
I think we're ascribing too much competence to our politicians if we're to say there's some grand sort of plan behind the scenes. Really, what we saw over the last 3 days was a bit of chaos from the Labour Party. The Labour leader went to ground for 3 days, not knowing what to do, not knowing what to say, and in many ways was almost bounced into making that statement last night. There were some people leaking decisions and discussions within the leader of the opposition's office before those decisions were made. And so, in any effect, if Sir Keir Starmer wasn't to say that he would resign, he would look almost cowardly, particularly because of the incredibly strong stance he took against the Chancellor and the Prime Minister.
He didn't say he was going to resign. He read he was going to resign. And this is my worry, that he is a performer. He is a lawyer. What is he? Is he a barrister or is he QC? What is he?
He's a QC.
QC, right. You think this man would have oratorial skills, performance skills, whatever, and he comes out dead as a dodo and he reads a statement.
It's interesting as well, because if we look into the lawyering around this statement, he said he would resign if he gets a fixed penalty notice. But that's not the only outcome that could come out from Durham Police. For example, Durham Police investigated Dominic Cummings. Now, they released a sort of halfway house statement with regard to Dominic Cummings, not issuing a fixed penalty notice, but not saying that he was completely clear, saying there was a probable breach of the rules. Now, if Durham Police say with Keir Starmer there's been a probable breach of the rules, as they did with Dominic Cummings, but don't issue a fixed penalty notice, Sir Keir Starmer's not committing to resign in that outcome, even though Sir Keir Starmer called on Dominic Cummings to resign when that same outcome happened to him.
Yeah, and was he not calling for the Prime Minister to resign even before he was issued a fine, just whilst he was under investigation? Look, this whole argument about whether or not he's putting undue pressure on the police, because he and Angela Rayner together saying that they will go if they're fined, puts the police in a difficult position, doesn't it? I mean, a lot of... And also, you were saying, talking about conspiracy theorists, lots of people saying that in Durham, the Police and Crime Commissioner is a left-leaning political leader there. How much of that will influence the police, do you think?
Yes, I think it's important to stress that the police are operationally independent of the Police and Crime Commissioners. The Police and Crime Commissioner position is one that oversees the work of the police but doesn't direct that work. When it comes to, however, whether or not the Labour Party is attempting to bounce the police, there have been some voices around allies of Keir Starmer who've said exactly that. On record, or briefing rather, to journalists, saying that this is going to make it incredibly difficult for the police to do anything other than think incredibly hard here, in a way that potentially leads a number of junior officers in one of the smallest police forces in the country holding a sort of Damocles over the future leadership of Her Majesty's loyal opposition. I mean, this is a really quite incredible situation that we found ourselves in. And I think it is worth noting that at the time of the police investigation into the Prime Minister, there were a number of people supportive of the Prime Minister saying, well, this is the Met are going to have to think incredibly carefully here because they're wading into politics with their decision. Are they really going to choose the Prime Minister? And the Labour Party was very critical of those voices then. It does seem now that the boot is on the other foot.
Well, never a dull moment. Tom Harwood, thank you. And Showbiz with his own show 9:30 this morning. What are you going to be leading on?
Well, I'll be down in Westminster. I'll be on College Green. We'll be looking at that state opening of Parliament and the week ahead in politics.
Good man. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Well, the time, 11 minutes past 7. Good morning to you, wherever you're watching or listening from.
Now, if you're getting up this morning and heading to the airport, particularly if you are flying from Birmingham or Manchester, you may be one of thousands of passengers who'll be encountering delays today. There were long queues yesterday for several hours, and this as the travel industry continues to suffer from staff shortages.
OK, so what was the problem this time? The situation yesterday was described as absolute chaos and manic by people on social media. One person said it took her 2 hours to get through check-in and security. 2 hours.
Yeah, well, in July, the West Midlands will welcome more than 1 million spectators for the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, and many will be using the airport. Our reporter, Will Hollis, has been looking into this.
Lightheaded long before even lifting off the ground, thousands of passengers were forced to wait for hours in dizzying queues outside Birmingham Airport yesterday. Some called it chaos. Staff say it was all part of the plan.
Today was an exceptionally busy morning for us. This morning, obviously, a large amount of people going away on travelling. So the queues were downstairs, but we took a conscious decision this morning to take the queue outside to make sure that it didn't tangle up with other important airport functions at the check-in process. Because if that would have happened, that would have created more challenges for us as an airport. So we took a conscious decision to ask passengers to queue outside.
The aviation industry is struggling under the rapidly returning demand for foreign travel, but cracks caused by the pandemic remain. Nearly half the staff here were made redundant during COVID. The airport says it's recruiting now, but jobs industry-wide are empty. It means some passengers were left stranded, missing their flights.
There were a handful of people who did miss, but what we do as an airport is making sure that they are rebooked and provided with that onward travel, and any difference in that cost is picked up by the airport.
The picture seen today will send shivers down most passengers' spines, but long queues can be expected in many different airports throughout the summer.
Manchester and Heathrow are struggling too, but the aviation industry is confident it can deliver this summer.
Incrementally, every day and every week, the queues will be more manageable for us to ensure that we can return to providing that great customer service that Birmingham has done in the past and will do again in the future.
Will Hollis for GB News in the West Midlands.
Good luck with that. Let us know how you get on.
Never a tremendous experience, but you know, honestly, the staff they work so hard, and they are really up against it. And I always have huge admiration for people, everyone from the guys and girls who load suitcases onto planes to people who check you through security
Dealing
or
with
check in.
very grumpy people.
Well, I often say to them, why are you so happy?
Yeah.
Some of them are really quite happy.
Yeah,
and
special sort of person that ends up doing that job, I think.
Yeah.
A big shout out to them.
Good luck to you.
Look, the time is 7:14. Let's bring you right up to date on the latest headlines this morning. And the Prince of Wales is to read the Queen's speech for the first time as Her Majesty is experiencing so-called episodic mobility problems. It'll be the first time the Queen has missed the state opening of Parliament in almost 60 years. The last time was due to the birth of some of her children. The Duke of Cambridge will also be attending the ceremony today.
The MP for Bridgend, Jamie Wallace, is to appear in court, charged with failing to stop after being involved in a car crash last year. The Conservative member and first openly transgender MP was arrested on suspicion of driving whilst unfit after a car hit a lamppost last November. He's also been charged with failing to report a collision, driving without care, and leaving a vehicle in a dangerous position.
3 in 4 parents say they're worried about their children's mental health after the pandemic. A survey of 2,000 found nearly half say their child's now having problems with friendships and socialising.
Now, more on this cost of living crisis. New figures released show that 2 million people in the UK can't afford to eat every day due to the cost of living crisis. In fact, 1 in 7 live in homes where people have eaten smaller portions, skipped meals, or gone hungry all day because they couldn't afford or access food.
Well, Kat Hobbs joins us. She's the director of We Own It. That's an organisation that campaigns against privatisation. She joins us in the studio. A very good morning to you.
Good morning.
First of all, can you just set out to all of us really why privatisation is in any way sort of linked to cost of living?
Absolutely. So we've been seeing over the past 40 years
that we have been paying more for all kinds of things. So we're paying more since privatisation for our energy bills, for our water bills, for our transport costs, public transport costs. And so really what we have right now is an economy that works for a handful of shareholders rather than working for ordinary people. What we've seen in the cost of living crisis is this has got so much worse. And it's absolutely shocking that we're now in a situation where, people are going to food banks and asking for food where you don't have to cook it with gas so that they can just get by. But the reason for this is because a handful of people are making an absolute killing right now. They're making huge, huge profits at all of our expense.
Yeah, the timing of it doesn't look well, does it, either? I mean, Isabel, we were debating earlier on, and you were saying about the oil industry, oil and gas industry, and you, in fairness, said that they are disproportionately taxed.
Yeah, they're taxed higher than other industries.
Yeah, but I would like to hear what Kat thinks of that.
Well, I don't think that's right. Shell and BP have made £150 billion in the last 10 years. If you just look at the last few months, Shell's made £7.3 billion in profits, BP £5 billion. They've got so much money, they don't know what to do with it. And those profits, Shell's profits, for example, that's a tripling of profits. It's the highest profits they've ever recorded. And that's at a time when Shell Energy is putting up people's direct debits by double.
So you're all in favour of a windfall tax then?
Absolutely a windfall tax, absolutely. And, the situation we have in this country is shocking, and it's a political choice. And we can see that when we look at other countries. For example, if you look at Norway, they have essentially a permanent windfall tax on their oil and gas. So for every £8 that we collect in tax, Norway collects £100. What that means in practice is that in this crisis, Norway has been able to pay for people's bills, 80% of people's bills above a capped price. So people aren't suffering in Norway.
And the oil and gas companies are still making money.
They're still making money, they're still operating, and Norway has managed to lead the green transition. They've got a publicly owned renewables company. They're setting up more of those. So they've got green renewable energy, but they're actually taxing the oil and gas.
What's interesting, David Mellor comes on to our programme to review the papers quite often, of course, a Thatcherite minister, and he also has come out and said he's in favour of seeing a windfall tax being imposed. So it's not necessarily a left argument anymore. What could the government be doing to tackle? I mean, we talk about 2 million people in this country going hungry. I mean, that's when you sort of down tools and go, OK, look, something's going wrong.
There's something wrong with your priorities, if that's what you think. I mean, it's an obvious bias towards shareholders over ordinary people.
Really, really obvious. What we see, for example, so windfall tax, absolutely, but the government needs to go much, much further than that. And there are so many tools they could use. So right now, our grid, so the transmission and distribution that takes energy to people's homes, that's all private monopolies. They have the highest profit margins of any business, over 40% profit margins. And so, for example, if you're in the Northeast, your electricity is brought to you by a company owned by Warren Buffett, the US billionaire. He's making a huge amount of money. If you're in London and the Southeast, it's Li Ka-shing, a Hong Kong billionaire. He made $237 million dividend last summer and the summer before. All of those profits going out of the system, so the government could bring the grid back into public ownership, which is a normal thing in other countries. And then more things that they could do. France has a publicly owned energy supply company, EDF. And what that means is that in this crisis, they've limited the energy bill rises to 4%. So we're seeing rises of doubling of people's direct debits, and they're seeing 4%.
So you want to see a cap brought back in. But I just want to go back to the shareholder point, because a lot of the shareholders for these big companies are pension organisations, and those pension, whether it's Transport for London, whoever it may be, they'll be standing to gain from seeing these big profits.
Yeah, a little bit, but actually pensions are a very tiny bit of the pot, and so I don't think we need to worry about that. What we need to worry about is the people who can't afford to live an everyday life, and that's pensioners too. Pensioners are really suffering in this crisis. We see, 2 out of 5 people right now can't afford to heat their homes properly in the winter. This isn't a sustainable situation, so we have to take some bold action. Another thing the government could do, by the way, is insulating people's homes. It's an absolute no-brainer. They're sort of implying we can't do anything. They cut the funding in 2013 for the insulation programme. We have the least energy-efficient homes in Europe. So we're in this situation where shareholders are making money, people can't afford to heat their homes, they can't afford to feed their children. It's absolutely unsustainable, and it's a political choice that the government is making.
OK, Kat Hobbs is the director of We Own It. If you're watching that and you've been affected by any of these issues, let us know. We want to hear from you. Are you one of those 2 million people who are making these awful decisions to skip meals or indeed not being able to feed their children? We Are the People's Channel. Let us know your thoughts.
Yeah. So in the last 3 months alone, 60% of you are really finding it difficult to pay your bills. Are you surprised to that? Have you got a solution to that? Whose fault is this? What would you do to put things right? Time 7:22. After the break, the top sports stories. Paul Coyte with those all to come after the weather.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Eamonn McGivern from the Met Office. A cloudy and damp start for some across England and Wales, but that cloud and rain will clear through the morning, replaced by sunny spells, but also some fairly lively showers in the north. At the moment, we've got a couple of areas of low pressure to the north and northwest of the UK. They've been sending weather fronts in from the northwest. It was a wet day yesterday for Scotland and Northern Ireland. That rain is now across central and southern parts of England, but really is a weakening feature. So the rain more or less petering out, very little as the front clears East Anglia and the southeast. Sunny spells then follow, and for the south and southeast, mostly it's just a fine afternoon with warm sunshine, 20-21 Celsius possible towards the southeast. But scattered showers for parts of Wales and northern England, and some very lively downpours for Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it will feel cooler, 15 to 17 Celsius here. And those showers turning into longer spells of rain, I think, through the evening across western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well. So an unsettled night to come for Scotland, for Northern England, Northern Ireland. Drier and clearer for a time further south, but even in the south we'll see clouds thickening, 12 Celsius at dawn on Wednesday, but also some outbreaks of rain starting to emerge towards the southwest. And this area of rain is going to slowly spread across some southern parts of England, into the Midlands perhaps, as well as South Wales by the afternoon. A lot of uncertainty about the track of the rainfall, so some error bars concerning its position. Wouldn't take the graphics too literally at this point, but nevertheless some fairly useful rainfall potentially for southern parts of England and Wales. Scotland, Northern England, Northern Ireland keep the sunny spells and showers, and it's a similar picture here on Thursday and Friday, turning drier and brighter meanwhile further south, and a fine weekend for many.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Big transfer news to begin the sport today. Paul Coit was going to tell us who's going to bag Erling Haaland.
Looks like Manchester City. Looks very much like Manchester City. I'm going to use a phrase or a word I've never used on here before, and that's wunderkind. Because that's what he is. He's 21 years old, this kid. And he played...
He's a goal machine.
He is a goal machine. I think it's 83 goals in 88 games for Borussia Dortmund. That's how much of a goal machine he is. Manchester City have had their eye on him for some time. And there's a buyout clause with Dortmund, which is £63 million, which, of course...
not a lot for a goal machine.
Well, it sounds like a huge amount of money, but you're right, for a goal machine and to go to the top of his game, 63 million doesn't sound like a lot. There you go, 85 goals in 88 games, went from RB Salzburg, then to Dortmund, who have history in bringing through young players and then selling them at more money, and he's expected to earn about £400,000 to £500,000 a week, which is not bad going.
And of course his dad played at City.
Our finger, yeah. And he grew up a Man City fan as well as a kid. So I don't know whether that actually helps things when you're going to move to a club when you're a little bit older. I'm not really sure. But you go where the money is, you go where the success is likely to be. And the only question is whether he's actually going to fit into the system perfectly for Manchester City. But for someone like him, you know, you make allowances and bring him in because he's going to be a fantastic sign.
You're talking about, 63 million being a lot of money. West Ham are looking at 150 million for Declan Rice.
Exactly, and try and compare the two.
Yeah.
I mean, different positions, of course.
Declan Rice, great player, but I mean, this guy will guarantee you points on the board.
He will, and he's, like I say, he's 21 years old.
Yeah.
So he is going to be worth a fortune. So it looks like, I mean, there's rumours that there's the medical is going on now. Some people are saying, well, this came out of nowhere, but it's obviously been planned for quite some time. And also the other story, of course, because Harry Kane, it was last year, seemed likely to go to Manchester City. Obviously, that's not going to happen. Erling Haaland is the guy. So I think it's great that someone like him is going to come to the Premier League, because I think it'd be great for the whole Premier League.
Interesting. So I'm not going to see him in a red shirt, but you just wonder with the merry-go-round that goes on, would you be seeing Harry Kane in a red shirt? But he seems things have settled down at Spurs, haven't they?
Harry Kane in a red shirt, I don't think so. You may be Erling Haaland, so maybe what he'll do, it could be an audition. So he goes in at City, scores plenty of goals, give it a couple of years, and then he'll move upstairs to Manchester United. Do you think that could be the answer?
No.
OK.
Aston Villa against Liverpool.
Yep, that's tonight. Obviously, all talk is going to be about Steven Gerrard, because we know Steven Gerrard, what a legend at Liverpool. He's been now the manager at Aston Villa. Aston Villa could be their highest finish that they've had in over 10 years in the Premier League. But if you're Steven Gerrard, what are you thinking? Are you thinking being a Liverpool legend?
No, what he's thinking is what's best for Villa.
Well, of course he is, but it's still going to be at the back of his head. Does he want to carry the can of being the guy that was the manager of the team that actually stopped Liverpool from winning the title? It's just the way that fate sits, so that could well happen.
We've been talking about conspiracy theories today, and on Saturday you had Bristol Rovers beating Scunthorpe United 7-0. A big win.
Yep.
Why is it so significant?
Well, it is extremely significant because Bristol Rovers and Northampton Town have gone into the last game of the season. They're on the same points. Now, this is for the last promotion place, automatic promotion place, to go up to League One. So Bristol Rovers had to better Northampton's result or win by 5 or more goals to go up. So Northampton Town beat Barrow 3-1. I mean, I'm not good with numbers, but I'm trying my absolute best at this. Northampton beat Barrow 3-1, which then meant that Bristol Rovers were going to have to beat Scunthorpe 7-0 or more to actually get the automatic promotion place.
And they did.
What do you know?
7-0.
They won 7-0. They ended up on equal goal difference and equal points, but the fact that they'd scored more goals means automatically they go up. I mean, 7-0. So the problem is, and Northampton have been complaining about this, saying that Scunthorpe didn't field the best team that they could have fielded. There were plenty of teenagers. There was 4 players from the under-18s that played, which then they say gave Bristol Rovers an unfair advantage. The rule, as far as the EFL is concerned, you've got to have at least 10 players in your side that played in the last game. Now, I don't think Northampton Town are actually, because they're going to now go into the playoffs. They're not actually saying we want it null and void. They're just trying to make a point and say, look, this really isn't right and this should be looked at for future clubs. But I mean, 7-0.
Yeah,
Can you imagine being one of the fans and thinking it's 5, it's 6 now?
Drama and intrigue in the lower leagues.
Yeah, it is drama.
Got to leave it there. Yeah. Thank you very much indeed. 7:32 the time is.
Stay with us. We'll be going through your Tuesday morning newspapers today with Kate Hardcastle and Norman Baker. It was lively last hour. I'm sure it'll be the same again this hour. See you in a moment.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Let's bring you up to date news-wise with the time at 25 to 8. The Prince of Wales will read the Queen's speech for the first time as Her Majesty experiences mobility problems. It'll be the first time she's missed the state opening of Parliament in almost 60 years. The Duke of Cambridge will also attend the ceremony.
MP for Bridgend, Jamie Wallace, is to appear in court charged with failing to stop after being involved in a car crash last year. The Conservative member and first openly transgender MP was arrested on suspicion of driving whilst unfit after a car hit a lamppost last November. He's also been charged with failing to report a collision, driving without care and leaving a vehicle in a dangerous position.
The government is planning to crack down on disruptive guerrilla protests used by campaign groups like Insulate Britain. The public order bill will be announced in today's Queen's speech and will outlaw tactics like demonstrators gluing themselves to roads or locking on to public transport.
Should just add on that story, we've got Kit Malthouse appearing on the programme a little bit later. He is, of course, policing minister, so we can ask him exactly what the government's plans are that will be announced.
Is he, of course, policing minister?
Well, many people will know.
Nobody will know. If we did a quiz today, what is and who is Kit Malthouse? He is, of course, policing minister. But anyway.
As you were, back in your box. Okay. Let's go through the papers now. At 7:35, we're joined by Kate Hardcastle and Norman Baker. And let's start, shall we, Kate, with this story in the Express about energy bills. They're saying it's going to go up to £3,000 come the autumn.
But I think that's very realistic, unfortunately. And there's also a little box in there talking about how pawn shop lending is on the rise because people are actually having to cash in just to pay the bills right now. I mean, that's the reality in May. We know we've got another fuel cap increase to come in. We know inflation is showing no signs of slowing down. We know that's on really significant items, the essentials in the food shopping basket. These are not, the nice-to-haves. These are absolute essentials. And we know that food bank visits are on the increase. And that is particularly, I'm hearing from dual income families. So this is not where there's no wage earner this is where people are earning 2 wages and still not affording it. Isabel, I'm concerned. I'm really concerned, and I'm hoping the government are going to step in and start doing the right thing.
Yeah, and are you seeing any signs that they are from what's being sort of previewed in the Queen's speech today, or do you think we need to see some sort of summer emergency budget to redress perhaps some of the perhaps less well-advised announcements in Rishi Sunak's spring statement?
The latter, seriously, because all I've seen is some sound bites, which is what seems to happen. You know, this PR of we're going to build new homes, and then actually the reality is there's less built than they promise. Are we actually going to get some movement? He says he's going to get the economy moving again, but if these are long-term measures, we've got a short-term crisis.
Do you know, we talk about this and the reality of this, and yet here's a story in the Express, Norman, and it's about a beach hut. You're talking about people can't afford to heat or eat. And here we have it's like a doll's house, right? So how much is it expected to go for?
This is also in the Telegraph, and it's £250,000 for a beach hut with no electricity, no running water, and you're banned from sleeping in it. This is in Southwold in Suffolk, and if that's not bad enough, apparently there are some beach huts in Dorset selling for £500,000. So here we are with people who can't pay electricity bills, who are not able to have two or three meals a day. Other people are buying beach huts for £500,000.
What's your point, energy? I was going to I don't know why. What's your point, Norman? Are you saying that people who have money aren't allowed to spend it? I mean,
It's just indecent. The comparisons are decent.
Well, so what? We hate everyone that has a nice car?
No, we don't. No, but what we do have, what I'm drawing attention to perhaps, is the government has a responsibility to make sure that people who are on the breadline have enough to eat and can pay their basic bills. And if they say there's no money to be found, well, clearly there is money to be found if people can buy a beach hut for £500,000.
We need to tax those people more.
Maybe we do. These are tough choices, but we can't expect people who've got no money to make cuts when people at the top end are buying beach huts for that.
But even if you had a spare £250,000 hanging about, would you spend it on a big doll's house?
It's funny you asked me that, because I was at the seaside in Hampshire at the weekend near the New Forest. This is just along from Muddyford, where at Christchurch, I think they have some of the most expensive beach huts in the country. And we saw lots of people sitting and enjoying them. And I was thinking to myself, why would anyone spend this sort of money
that's okay. I thought you were going to think
on a
what
shack?
to do with one of those.
No, I thought they looked really cute, and my little 4-year-old daughter was completely besotted with them. They look like giant Wendy houses.
Sure.
But no, I'll be spending that on something
really
else.
cute. They've no running water. You're not allowed to sleep in them.
Yeah, but you're out of the wind. You can sunbathe. I mean, just imagine
But how many days a year can you actually use it sensibly?
Well, lots more when you've got a little beach hut to protect you from the weather and the elements.
But there used to be, correct me if I'm wrong, when I was young, there used to be all those screen things. You used to put a stick in the ground and then it had
like a windbreak.
A windbreak.
Yes, a windbreak.
Which would probably cost you about $19.99.
It's not quite the same.
Have you ever sat watching on a British beach and watching people try to get changed and do the windbreak and the deck chair thing? Just watching someone actually try to put up deck chair. That is 30 minutes of comic value.
Well, we're just highlighting that really to show the world's not equal. It's not equal.
Yeah, well, look, let us know. Do you have one of those beach huts, or do you aspire to have one? Let us know. What is it with the British and their beach huts? Kate, let's talk now about airport chaos. We've been highlighting it on our programme this morning, like awful queues being seen yesterday. Hour and a half, I think some people were talking about, 2 hours to get through security at Manchester and Birmingham airports.
And I think you've got a correspondent at Birmingham as well who've been talking about it. And absolutely, we've got this situation where we have staffing issues in a lot of industries, and that cannot be highlighted enough. It's an incredibly difficult issue if you're running a business and you just cannot get the right staff to help. At the same time, we've got this surge of people coming back to travel, quite rightly. They want their holidays. They're taking holidays that have been postponed a few years. But coming through some of these airports is a real challenge. Everyone knows what the numbers look like because the flights are booked in advance. And you can't help but try and understand, why are people missing flights? Why are we in this situation, particularly the Manchester issue? I actually personally went through that. Oh, my goodness me. You know, we didn't even have luggage trolleys. You couldn't get hold of a luggage trolley. And it is so frustrating because, you know, as well as people connecting with the outside world, this is people's first impression of us coming into those airports as well.
And are other countries not experiencing the same problems? And
I'm sure here and there, but when I've travelled, which I've done quite a lot of places, I've not seen any of it. No, the airport has been pretty simplistic.
Okay, what was I looking at there? Here's a disgusting story. Guardian, and they talk about food banks, Norman, and people who use food banks, and think of, the pride people have to swallow of using a food bank. They have to pluck up a lot of courage. They have to be in a desperate situation. What happens when they arrive at this particular one?
Well, of course, just to say that food banks are used by people who are in full-time employment quite a lot these days as well. Yeah. But this is a story about sharks, I think, if I can call them that, who are private parking operators who issued 22,000 tickets a day to people for allegedly parking where they shouldn't be parking. In this case, wrongly, because this is a food bank in Sunderland. It's staffed by volunteers. There's a free car park owned by the charity, and yet the company which has been contracted to manage it, an Australian company called Smart Parking, I don't know who's very smart about it, has been issuing tickets for allegedly not being allowed to park there, though people are. £170 parking tickets. Now, the thing is, they've now been rescinded because the Guardian's got onto the company. But the thing is, if you are somebody who receives that ticket through the post, you may feel obliged to pay it because it's a threatening letter, effectively. It's demanding money with menaces. Yeah. And the other thing is, if you don't pay it, of course, these things double. Mm-hmm. So you pay it to stop it doubling. Yeah, and stop giving yourself a record, a credit mark and all that sort of thing. And these are people who can't afford... They're going to a food bank for food and they're being asked £170 for a parking ticket. Yeah. Private parking operators, otherwise known as sharks, I've been complaining about them for years. Nothing's ever done. They seem to be a necessary evil, evil being the right word. But I always have this thing that we shouldn't be penalising people to park, Kate, particularly the high street. We should be facilitating them. There should be wardens directing you and say, Miss Hardcastle, I can give you 15 minutes there in that space, but you'll really have to be out after that, and you keep the traffic flowing. Something done with a smile on your face to facilitate people instead of this penalty type thing.
Completely. And also the logical elements of, bathrooms, toilet facilities in high streets. It drives me mad. I have been both the carer for an elderly person in a wheelchair and the mum of twins. And you have to think about practical elements. You've got to think about convenience. Pavements that have got upturned paving stones, or you can't actually cross the road safely. We need that kind of town planning mentality to be relevant to a generation that's living in those places. We're not going to have an abundance of retail anymore. Our high streets cannot hang its hat on retail. It is going to be a social space, but we are social creatures by habit, and we need those places to be. We've got an isolation crisis going on. We can't get people back together, but then we talk about high streets, and one of the things that have come up today apparently will be mentioned is more pavement cafes. Brilliant. We live in a fair weather country, a lot of the time we're not going to be able to facilitate and use outdoor seating, eating environments. But we really do need to look at the fundamentals.
Kate, let's talk about Deborah James. She's on the front of The Sun today. Yeah. You've gone inside the Express with this on page 11. Known to a lot of people as Bowel Babe. She did a highly successful podcast, and she's posted what she says is the post that she never wanted to have to put out there. What's she saying?
I just wanted to say thank you to these ladies. Deborah James, Rachel Bland, who we lost in 2018. The podcast was called You, Me and the Big C. I think it's still actually live and going now with Rachel's husband involved as well, Steve Bland. But they have done such a brilliant job in trying to talk about the reality, the honesty, the authenticity of being cancer sufferers, what they go through, and actually life generally as well. And it's so incredibly sad to read this tweet from Deborah, but I have listened and really benefited from their knowledge and their complete honesty, and it's just...
And what's she saying? She's saying her body's giving up. She's been sent home for hospice care at home. Yeah, so she's by her family.
She's a presenter on this podcast. They're all from TV and media anyway. That's how they started and how they met each other. But she's saying that unfortunately she's gone to palliative care now, and she just can't do a lot of the functions, can't walk. So unfortunately, it's the tweet she never wanted to send, she says.
And look, she's a mum, so our thoughts go out to, obviously to her, but to her kids and to her whole family. Yeah, really difficult time, and lots of other people in the same situation as her as well, and we're thinking of them as well.
We go to the Times. There's a diary piece in the Times about Boris Johnson and Ed Balls, the former Shadow Chancellor.
There is. Actually, there's a piece in the Eye which was headed Prime Minister resigns as unrest grows, which encouraged me this morning, but it then turns out to be about Sri Lanka. There is a piece in the Times about Boris Johnson which says, I'll just read it to you, Boris Johnson and Ed Balls appeared in a Year 10 maths exam last week. A parent in South London tells me, in a question about Newtonian force, the two politicians were placed on a seesaw at different distances from the pivot, and students were asked to work out which way it would tilt. In good news for the Prime Minister, the question setter seems to think that Ed Balls is much heavier. Well, there we are. That's personalising politics for you, isn't it?
What was Ed Balls' portfolio now I think about it? Shadow
Chancellor.
So he should win in that test.
He should do, yeah. The seesaw of politics is being brought to life by the Times.
I don't fancy a Year 10 maths exam, do you?
I made a tragic mistake once of going on a programme on Sky called Are You Smarter Than a 10-Year-Old?
Oh, no. And you're not?
Absolutely not. And I fell out on the question. They asked me to spell Mississippi.
This is Miss Science.
That's all right. That's 2 S's, 2 P's, 2 S's.
Oh, well, of course, I got it wrong. And do you know why I got it wrong? Sorry, I spelt it right. And then they go to a poll of all these little smart-aleck 10-year-olds who 9 out of 10 of them said it was spelt another way. So I thought, so then doubt entered my head and I thought, I'm going to look so stupid if I am the only one that's going to say, no, kids, it's spelt differently, and everybody's going to laugh at me. So I went with the kids. Got it wrong.
But Eamonn, you're not Darren Quayle. Remember Darren Quayle? Who went into a school in I think it was Florida. He was vice president, was he not, at the time?
Wasn't it?
And potato. And the kids had spelled potato correctly. And he said, no, there's an E on the end of it.
Oh, God.
Now, not many of you will know that Kate Hardcastle, despite her business acumen, is also a magnificent entertainer.
Singer.
A great vocalist. She fronts her own band called Katie and the Pussycats.
That makes nonsense.
What is your band called?
For funk's sake. Say that when you've had a drink.
Oh dear. Right, anyway. So you're going to talk to us now about a musician called Paul Heaton, and Paul Heaton is associated with?
The Beautiful South, and also he's works with Jacqueline, oh my goodness, Jackie Abbott.
You can also say, also a talented musician.
I've also got my band.
So we should got the newspaper band.
Put them together.
The Reform Club. Yeah, we should do it together.
Yeah. Bring your instruments next week.
Little set.
So what's Paul Heaton up
I just love this because it's a really upbeat story in a very challenging time. And Paul Heaton's well renowned in the music industry. And what he did to celebrate his 60th birthday is he went to 60 pubs and said, here's a grand, put it behind the bar, I'm buying drinks. And so, obviously, we know how hard hit a lot of those small businesses have been. People were flooded in yesterday to celebrate his birthday and enjoy a pint on him. Brilliant.
So that was 60 grand he spent?
Yeah.
Wow.
He's got too much money.
Wow.
I think it's a really nice gesture.
Property, is it? A little house in Sandbanks or something.
Yeah.
But I think that's a lovely thing for his fans. You know, he's got dedicated fans who've loved him all this time and, you know, sharing the love. I like it.
OK, very good. Cheers to you and happy birthday, Paul Heaton. Coming up to 10 minutes to 8, we say goodbye to Kate and Norman, and they're going to be back in 40 minutes' time.
Now, we're talking about a really awful case now. More than £108 million has been paid out by a compensation scheme for people who were abused in children's homes run by Lambeth Council in South London. And GP News can exclusively reveal this.
Well, it's believed to be one of the largest payouts by a council for sexual abuse in British history. Alice Porter has been speaking to some of the victims, and a warning that some of you may find her report distressing.
My house parent said to me, always remember that you're nothing here.
Sandra Fearon was at Shirley Oaks for 5 years in the 1960s and was repeatedly sexually abused.
He told me to lie on this sort of hospital couch and then he raped me. And I was just screaming and sobbing. And the pain was just dreadful. He held me down, and that went on for 2 years.
So you've received one of the largest payouts in compensation. What kind of difference has that made to your life?
The compensation actually doesn't take the pain away, but it does help to maybe make my future a bit more secure. and you've been recognised that it happened. We're believed, and that is just so important to me.
Sandra is one of 2,236 people who have applied to the Lambeth redress scheme for compensation. Applicants have to provide evidence of their abuse. Shane Donnelly suffered physical, sexual and racist abuse at Shirley Oaks. He's waited 2 years for compensation.
People have received far less for the same abuse because they're black. Felt almost sort of like victimised all over again. We had to go through psychiatrists, and the psychiatrists used our care files, which was written by our perpetrators. I know people who they got so ill and stressed that they just took the lowest offer.
Survivors are being supported by Raymond Stevenson, who also went to Shirley Oaks. He's been gathering evidence from victims for 7 years and campaigned for them to receive compensation.
Without the evidence we've collated, there wouldn't be any compensation. It's really just proving people were in the cottage, in the home, that the paedophile was working there, and then getting supporting evidence and other victims who were also abused by the same person.
Lambeth Council has apologised for the abuse committed against children at the borough's children's homes. They say their redress scheme is the first of its kind in the country and includes compensation to victims and survivors where race was an aggravating feature in the abuse. Only 6 men have been convicted since the 1990s in connection with abuse in the care homes. For Shane and Sandra, apologies are not enough.
They make a big thing of wanting to change the names of roads because of slavery, but they've discriminated against black survivors who were abused by them as a council.
People have got away with it. There's lies up till this day. That's what I'd like to see, a criminal investigation.
Alice Porter, GB News.
Liars, abusers, criminals, absolutely awful to take away the innocence of a child. We're now going to go live to Alice at Lambeth Town Hall in Brixton. It has been a long battle for these people to get any sort of recognition, any sort of compensation. Is the end approaching? Is the end in sight for them, Alice?
I think it is for some people, as you say. I mean, this has been going on for years of people trying to get compensation, and it's been immensely difficult for survivors coming forward, as you could see from that piece there, of them having to explain the abuse they went through and how re-traumatising that can be. Now, 72% of the claims of people who've come forward have been completed. That means there's still another 28% of those people who have come forward who still have their claims to be completed. So that figure of £108 million is still expected to rise quite significantly. But there are many who say that this redress scheme does not go far enough because it crucially doesn't include children who went to the Melting Pot in Brixton. Now, the Melting Pot was a charitable foundation. It had 3 children's homes that was operating in Brixton at the same time as Shirley Oaks. There was one just up to 10 minutes down the road from where I am. Now, there was horrendous cases of abuse because those 3 children's homes were predominantly for children who are black, and many of them suffered horrendous abuse, sexually, physically, but many of them have spoken out and said that they weren't fed and weren't given food or water or clean clothes. So some really, really horrendous issues of abuse there. Now, those children who are now adults who went to the Melting Pot in Brixton, they are not eligible for compensation through this scheme. Now, this is because Lambeth Council say they did not run the Melting Pot. That was an independent charitable foundation, but they did partly fund it, and they did also send children from through Lambeth Council to the children's homes, and there are many survivors who are very frustrated that they are not eligible for this redress scheme in compensation. So a long way to go. Many victims still feel in getting the money that they feel that they deserved after decades of living with the abuse they suffered.
Well, look, Lucy, thank you for bringing us that exclusive report. Lots of people getting in touch about that story. Nigel Norman saying, I'm watching this awful story, saying it's incredibly difficult to watch, but he says it is incumbent on us all to know how this horrific abuse unfolded. Nigel Norman, thanks for getting in touch, and I think that's really how we feel this morning.
Yeah,
a really difficult watch, but an important story.
It's important that we get the message out there, and also just warn children of dangers and when to be on the lookout for this sort of thing. The time now 4 minutes before 8 o'clock.
Stay with us. We're going to be live in Windsor after the break. On the morning after it's announced the Queen will miss the state opening of Parliament. Back after the weather.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Eamonn McGivern from the Met Office. A cloudy and damp start for some across England and Wales, but that cloud and rain will clear through the morning, replaced by sunny spells, but also some fairly lively showers in the north. At the moment, we've got a couple of areas of low pressure to the north and northwest of the UK. They've been sending weather fronts in from the northwest. It was a wet day yesterday for Scotland and Northern Ireland. That rain is now across central and southern parts of England, but really is a weakening feature. So the rain more or less petering out, very little as the front clears East Anglia and the southeast. Sunny spells then follow, and for the south and southeast, mostly it's just a fine afternoon with warm sunshine, 20-21 Celsius possible towards the southeast. But scattered showers for parts of Wales and northern England, and some very lively downpours for Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it will feel cooler, 15 to 17 Celsius here. And those showers turning into longer spells of rain, I think, through the evening across western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well. So an unsettled night to come for Scotland, for Northern England, Northern Ireland. Drier and clearer for a time further south, but even in the south we'll see clouds thickening, 12 Celsius at dawn on Wednesday, but also some outbreaks of rain starting to emerge towards the southwest. And this area of rain is going to slowly spread across some southern parts of England, into the Midlands perhaps, as well as South Wales by the afternoon. A lot of uncertainty about the track of the rainfall, so some error bars concerning its position. Wouldn't take the graphics too literally at this point, but nevertheless some fairly useful rainfall potentially for southern parts of England and Wales. Scotland, Northern England, Northern Ireland keep the sunny spells and showers, and it's a similar picture here on Thursday and Friday, turning drier and brighter meanwhile further south, and a fine weekend for many.
Tonight on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates and strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Dubes & Co.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The The Queen will not attend the state opening of Parliament for the first time in 59 years.
Good morning, it is 8:01 on Tuesday the 10th of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news this morning, Buckingham Palace has confirmed that the Queen will not attend the state opening of Parliament today due to episodic mobility problems.
Prince Charles will instead give the speech on behalf of the monarch.
The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has stated that he will resign if he's fined over Beergate, as his party prepares to hand over text logs and documents to Durham police.
The Prime Minister Boris Johnson's vowed to strive night and day to level up Britain ahead of the state opening of Parliament. A programme of 38 bills will be unveiled this morning, including proposals to drive up skills and do away with remaining EU red tape.
Thanks very much for keeping in touch with us this morning. We are keeping just seeing here on the state opening of Parliament. Keith asks, as the Queen has mobility issues, why isn't she doing the same as her subjects and using a wheelchair to get around? It's just, I think it's a personal thing with her. It's the way she wants to be seen.
I don't understand it. I tend to agree with Keith. Peter wonders what Prince Charles will make of the bill designed to limit the actions of groups like Insulate Britain and Extinction Rebellion. And Ken says that Prince Harry should have stayed in the USA rather than trying to make the Jubilee about himself and his TV show.
Yeah, well, there is a point there. I mean, the objection to that is as soon as he and his wife arrive anywhere, people are going to be talking about them, the media is going to be talking about them, as opposed to the monarch. Stuart wrote in to say that he bets after the Platinum Jubilee the Queen will step down and Charles will be king.
Interesting. So he thinks there'll be an abdication.
Which she always says she wouldn't do, but as we all look and see it as more acceptable now, why wouldn't she? Why doesn't the firm become the firm and all working?
Now that she is infirm. See what I did there?
Very good.
Let us know your views this morning. Get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet us at gbnews.
So here we go. The Queen is our lead story today, and Buckingham Palace confirmed last night that the Queen wouldn't be attending the state opening of Parliament today. Now, that's the first time in 59 years. The reason given?
It's so-called episodic mobility problems, which we think means sort of comes and goes, and that is why there was this late call yesterday afternoon, after months of planning, that Prince Charles and indeed Prince William will jointly carry out today's Queen's speech. Prince Charles delivering the speech himself. Let's bring in Tom Harwood, our political correspondent this morning. No, it's Tom Harwood. Sorry, we're going to Cameron first. I do apologise. Right, well, let's go to Windsor then, and we can speak to you. Hello, Cameron. I'm so sorry. I had a correspondent next to me, and I thought I was going to Tom. Cameron, look, bring us up to date then. How much should we be worrying about Her Majesty, or do you think that this is an effort from the Palace really to keep her on top form ahead of her Platinum Jubilee?
Well, it certainly was a possibility that she would not be attending the state opening of Parliament today, but Prince Charles, as we now know, is taking on a major constitutional role for the first time, reading the Queen's speech, setting out the government's plans over the next year or so. Now, the decision was taken yesterday by officials at Buckingham Palace in consultation with Her Majesty the Queen due to what the Palace is describing as episodic mobility problems. Now, from speaking to Buckingham Palace last night, they're not going into any further details on this, but we understand that it's kind of a continuation of those mobility problems which she has experienced since last autumn. She's missed it twice before, in 1959 and 1963, when she was pregnant with Andrew and Edward. Back then it was the Lord Chancellor who read the speech, actually, but now new letter patents authorised by Her Majesty gives Prince Charles and Prince William the joint powers to attend and open a new acts of a new parliamentary session. No other powers have been delegated by Her Majesty the Queen. This is possible due to a law passed in 1937 known as the Regency Act. Now, in the papers today, there have been talk of perhaps this is the start of a new regency. I think perhaps that's jumping the gun a little bit. Prince Charles will not be sat on the throne today, and Her Majesty very much still remains head of the armed forces, head of the government, head of the Commonwealth, and Supreme Governor of the Church of England. But there's no denying, Eamonn and Isabel, that, of course, Prince Charles is the heir to the throne, and it's perhaps a glimpse into the future.
Cameron, are you expecting any further updates on the Queen's health or whereabouts today?
Well, Eamonn, we know that, of course, Her Majesty the Queen is celebrating her Platinum Jubilee weekend in just 3 weeks' time, and she is, we have been told by Buckingham Palace, expected to appear on the balcony for Trooping the Colour, but we're also being told not to expect her attendance at any other events, and it's kind of, you know, a good thing and a nice surprise if Her Majesty does turn up. Because of these episodic mobility problems, she just simply doesn't know how she's going to be feeling on the day. So I suppose we shouldn't expect Her Majesty to be there, and as she hands over more powers to kind of younger members of the royal family, we'll just have to have them we'll have them carry out more and more duties of the sovereign.
Well, there we go. Queen's breakfast just being delivered there by Waitrose. Are they by appointment?
Lots of lorries.
Possibly, I think they will be. Cameron, thanks very much indeed. Thank you. We'll leave it there.
Let's get more on all of the politics then of the Queen's speech. Tom Harwood, as I was alluding to earlier, is joining me, sitting beside me in the studio here. Look, Tom, what can we expect from this Queen's speech? And important to always point out, I suppose, this is a ceremonial role for the royals. Indeed, Prince Charles today, not Her Majesty, but these are laws being set out by the government.
This is exactly what it is. No matter what the government is composed of, and we've had many different governments over the Queen's reign, this is what the government is setting out its agenda for, and the Queen describes what her government will do. So, well, in this case, it won't be the Queen, but indeed it will be the language of my government is committing to do X, Y and Z. And there are 38 bills in this Queen's speech. It's a quite expansive programme of government, everything we understand from housing to levelling up communities to restricting the ability of protesters to lock on to crucial infrastructure. I mean, there's a real whole host of different bills that the government will be attempting to get through Parliament over the course of this parliamentary session.
So the Prime Minister's aim from this speech then is to, as has been quoted in the front of the Express today, strive night and day to level up Britain. What can we expect to hear in terms of that? I mean, I can see just from the list of key measures, there's something like a Super 7 of Brexit freedoms being announced on this bonfire of EU laws. There's also talk about a Bill of Rights replacing the controversial Human Rights Act. Lots of Brexiteers still upset that we're still falling under that jurisdiction.
Absolutely, and when it comes to the Bill of Rights, the government has been saying for some time now that it's too hard to deport foreign criminals, that the way that the European Court of Human Rights Acts within the UK, the way that we transposed it into UK law under the Human Rights Act has almost changed the way that we view rights in this country, which used to be something that we were very proud of back in 1688, 1689, our original Bill of Rights. It was about all sorts of freedoms of people born in this country. And now we sort of view the Human Rights Act as something that is almost negative. Well, the government's trying to foster a bit more of a rights culture in a way that allows the government to get on not only with its legislative agenda and stop sort of legislating from the bench, as it's known, stop lawyers sort of fiddling with democratic politics, but also trying to ensure that there are rights that are granted to the people of Britain whilst not enabling foreign criminals to stay here using obscure mechanisms.
Other highlights, I suppose, or perhaps controversial bills, this so-called public order bill, which is to tackle things like Insulate Britain or Extinction Rebellion, really inconvenient for people going about their daily lives. But there will be people concerned, won't there, by what this entails and whether or not that will be curbing our freedoms too much. And I should say we've got Kit Malthouse coming on in a few moments' time from the government policing minister on this. How do you think or expect the government to be defending it?
Well, the government struggled over the last year or so, or 2 years even, when it comes to these environmental protests. And it's appeared quite frustrated at times when various legal mechanisms haven't been able to be deployed. And the police seem to have just been sort of standing there as people block highways, which of course is something that is illegal as well, but or even damage property when you see some of these protesters walk up to public buildings, smash their windows, cover things in paint. I mean, clearly that is something that is illegal in and of its own right, and calling something a protest when it's actually criminal damage. The government has a relatively strong argument there in order to toughen up the laws, but crucially, what we understand is this will be about infrastructure as well, crucial national infrastructure, potentially jail terms that are more lengthy for those that try and disrupt that.
Now, talking about disrupting things, normally the morning of the Queen's speech, you and I would be talking about perhaps what the leader of the opposition had said yesterday ahead of the Queen's speech. We didn't get that from Sir Keir Starmer yesterday. He's making a different kind of speech. Is this a man of integrity or is this a huge hypocrite?
Well, it's going to be... we're not going to know that until we reach the point at which Durham Constabulary conclude their investigation. What we saw was a bit of dither and a bit of delay for 3 days from the announcement of this police investigation into the leader of the Labour Party. He didn't quite know what to do, how to respond, and cancelled an event.
No alternative did he then to do this? I mean, it was bounced into having to make this announcement.
This is certainly true. There were discussions within the leader of the opposition's office all day. There were events cancelled, Q&As cancelled, where Keir Starmer didn't turn up even to the funeral of a Conservative MP. And indeed, it seemed that there were various bits of these discussions leaking out into the press, which in effect bounced Sir Keir Starmer into making this call, because otherwise he would have seemed incredibly weak. But the other hand, of course, is that given that he has called for so many politicians to resign for their fixed penalty notices, even when the fixed penalty notices may well have been slightly ambiguous or indeed set at a very low bar, as many people argue the case of Rishi Sunak was. Even when Sir Keir Starmer said that Rishi Sunak should resign, it would appear incredibly hypocritical for him not to do the same with himself.
Am I right in thinking he was actually even calling for people's resignations before fines were issued?
That's right. Both the leader of the Labour Party and the deputy leader of the Labour Party went on record at the start of the Metropolitan's police investigation into the Prime Minister and the wider Downing Street and Cabinet Office events. That was at the end of January, and that was, of course, many months before any fixed penalty notices were issued, and yet resignations were being called.
Yeah, and look, it does appear, anyway, there's this police investigation ongoing, but it does appear as though he has lied. I mean, Angela Rayner was there. He claimed she wasn't. He also claimed that this wasn't a spontaneous meeting on a work day, and it was leaked over the weekend that this was very much part of an agenda, and questions about whether or not he was working or not. That will all be part of his defence and all to be borne out. What about those people who say, look, the police can't possibly be doing an independent investigation into this, the pressure that they're under, given that he's said that he will resign, and Angela Rayner as well, on all of this. Is that fair? Do you think that the police are sufficiently independent to be trusted to look into this?
Well, it is extraordinary. One of the country's smallest police forces now has an incredible power over who the leader of Her Majesty's opposition is. This is incredible power given to some really quite small teams of police, and indeed some pressure there with those teams of police, because the Labour leader has got Lord Faulkner in to construct his legal defence. The Labour Party briefing out very heavily to the media last night that they can prove that there was work being done after the meal. Now, whether or not that means an email was sent a little bit later on or not, and how much that actually absolves the Labour Party leader and the other up to 30 people at that event is a crucial question. And the idea that the Labour Party will need to prove that this was something reasonably necessary for campaigning was a gathering of 30 individuals having curry and beer in Durham Miners Hall reasonably necessary for the work of campaigning. That's a test that they will have to meet, and judging by how the Metropolitan Police have tried to set that test against politicians, it could be seen to be a relatively low bar.
OK, well, speaking of bouncing into things, I know you have to bounce off to College Green now to cover the state opening of Parliament for us. We'll see you from there at the top of the 9 o'clock. Thanks very much, Tom Harwood.
With the time at 8:15, here's your latest news situation. The MP for Bridgend, Jamie Wallace, is to appear in court charged with failing to stop after being involved in a car crash last year. The Conservative member and first openly transgender MP was arrested on suspicion of driving whilst unfit after a car hit a lamppost last November. He's also been charged with failing to report a collision, driving without care, and leaving a vehicle in a dangerous position.
3 in 4 parents say they're worried about their children's mental health after the pandemic. A survey of 2,000 found nearly half of them saying their child now has problems with friendship and socialising.
Consumers are tightening their belts amid the rising cost of living. That's due to, or bared out by latest figures from the British Retail Consortium, which show total sales fell last month for the first time in over a year. Vladimir Putin addressed the people of Russia from Moscow yesterday as part of the country's Victory Day celebrations, but many observers say his rhetoric was less than triumphant. So what can it tell us about the war in Ukraine, which has now been going on for over 70 days? We go to the commentator, Michael Ryan. Michael is a former US Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defence for European and NATO policy. Michael, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Michael, you had a good look at the Victory Day parade. Was it what you were expecting, or what was your overall view of what you saw?
Well, the parade, as you know, is an annual event, and the rhetoric surrounding the parade is something that's been going on through the Soviet period since 1945. And so in that regard, it was a pretty standard display of Russian military might and rhetoric by the Russian president. The surprising thing was what he didn't say. He didn't call for a mobilization. He didn't declare war on Ukraine. And that's most likely because he feels he doesn't have the political support, both amongst his leadership class and amongst the people, to go that far. Or it could be that he just didn't think he could pull it off.
Well, very interesting that you say that he either can't pull it off or he hasn't got that support behind him. So how does he pass off what is going on?
Well, it seems that gradually the rhetoric has increased to the point where now it's a war between Russia and the West, in Putin's language, which means a gradual escalation, a gradual conditioning of the Russian people to accept whatever comes, which most likely means increasing demands on them from the Putin regime. And so he'll continue to elevate and wait for military success on the ground, which doesn't appear to be forthcoming.
I tell you what was going through my mind, and I suppose a lot of people, visually, you see all those soldiers, you see all those tanks, you see all those missiles going through Red Square. There was no fly past, there was nothing like that. But I was thinking, well, if they're all there in Moscow, what on earth is in Ukraine, or wouldn't they be better served being in Ukraine? I mean, if I was in charge of that war, I would be thinking, you know, why are we doing this when we could be doing that?
Well, it's a great point and a wonderful observation. I had the same thought. And the main reasons surround how the Russian regime is controlling both the population but also the government. A lot of those forces are dedicated to parades. And so they're designed to be on show. They're stationed around Moscow, and their purpose for being stationed around Moscow is to protect the Kremlin. And so the last thing that Putin would want to do was to make his military on parade look anything less than spectacular. And the second thing that he doesn't want to do is remove all his potential protection from around the Kremlin and around Moscow. Moscow really is the center of gravity for the Russian government and for the Russian sense of security. And to undermine the security of Moscow would really be to admit that the war in Ukraine isn't going so well, and we have to deploy our show forces, our most important forces that protect Moscow, down to Ukraine. So he has to keep these forces here. He has to put them on display. He has to demonstrate power, whether that power is real or not. So let's just call it a Potemkin parade, if you will.
You know, you were saying that he's trying to reason things, shape things as Russia against the West or the West against Russia. And in many ways, he's now not wrong, because the West is supplying the armament to Ukraine. Are we in a situation where it is a race between Russia and the West to get armament to the front line, because whoever does that has got the upper hand?
Yes, absolutely. I would see it as a race. And I would say that the race is the reason why the Russians committed to continued assaults in the Donbass in eastern Ukraine before they were prepared. Because of the situation around Kiev and their withdrawal of the forces and the beating they've been taking at the hands of the Ukrainians, they really should have taken more weeks and more time to reconstitute their forces, to set a new battle plan, to reorganize, and to get really ready for a big push into Ukraine from the east. They didn't do that. And I think the reason they didn't do that is they saw the incredible arms shipments coming from the Great Britain, from the United States, and from others into Ukraine in support of the Ukrainian armed forces. And they felt, my perception, they must have felt that they couldn't wait, because if they waited too long, then the Ukrainians would just be too strong and have too much modern weaponry to be pushed out of the way. And so they had to go early. And because they've gone early, they've made very little progress on all the axes of attack that they've been pursuing.
Yeah. Michael, what do you think happened to his Air Force yesterday? Why was there nothing in the sky?
Well, that's a great question. And as a former Air Force pilot, weather is always an issue, but apparently the weather around Moscow wasn't that bad. There could be any number of reasons. They could have been given other missions or had to stand down for other reasons. That's highly unlikely given the size of his Air Force. It could be a matter of trust. Perhaps they didn't want so many airplanes flying over the leadership of the Russian government at the same time, because who knows what could happen there. Or usually as things go with Air Force formations of such size, some minor technical glitch caused the whole thing to go down.
Yeah.
It could be any range of reasons.
Any range of things
on our part.
But it's interesting, it's so fascinating talking to you about both the technicalities and the psychology of things there as well, because you mentioned earlier to me that maybe he doesn't have the support from his inner circle as to what he's doing. Maybe the Air Force didn't fly overhead because someone might have dropped a bomb. He must be paranoid. He really must be paranoid, mustn't he?
Well, it's a reminder of that old saying that just because you're paranoid doesn't mean people aren't out to get you.
Yeah.
And so in that position, to rise to that level of power and to seize control over so many aspects of Russian life and Russian government, he has to be looking behind him a lot. There are some reports that he's been fascinated by regime change in other countries and how that came about. And it's clear that he's thought that the American government and others have been after regime change in Russia since his 2012 election, when we actually demonstrated quite aggressively in Russia against his re-election. So he must be paranoid. Whether that paranoia causes him to make poor decisions is another story. But he certainly has to consider, given everything that's at stake, what his personal exit strategy would be. It's hard to imagine that he could remain head of the Russian government if they completely fail in Ukraine, if there's nothing he can salvage as a quote-unquote victory for all the effort and all the losses that have been endured in Ukraine. And in that case, what are his options? And if he does leave power, given the war crimes investigations, the investigations of his amassed financial fortune, it's hard to imagine that he's going to be a free man long after he leaves power.
Michael, absolutely fascinating talking to you. Really, really appreciate your take on things. Got to say goodbye to you. Michael Ryan is the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defence for European and NATO policy there live from the USA. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Eamonn. My pleasure.
Thank you. Look, with that and the time at 24 minutes past 8, we will take a break. This is Mental Health Awareness Week, and we're going to be speaking to a male performing artist who says speaking out about his depression and anxiety has saved his life just by sharing it with other people. That to come after your weather picture.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A cloudy and damp start for some across England and Wales, but that cloud and rain will clear through the morning, replaced by sunny spells, but also some fairly lively showers in the north. At the moment, we've got a couple of areas of low pressure to the north and northwest of the UK. They've been sending weather fronts in from the northwest. It was a wet day yesterday for Scotland and Northern Ireland. That rain is now across central and southern parts of England, but really is a weakening feature. So the rain more or less petering out, very little as the front clears East Anglia and the southeast. Sunny spells then follow, and for the south and southeast, mostly it's just a fine afternoon with warm sunshine, 20-21 Celsius possible towards the southeast. But scattered showers for parts of Wales and northern England, and some very lively downpours for Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it will feel cooler, 15 to 17 Celsius here. And those showers turning into longer spells of rain, I think, through the evening across western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well. So an unsettled night to come for Scotland, for Northern England, Northern Ireland. Drier and clearer for a time further south, but even in the south we'll see clouds thickening. 12 Celsius at dawn on Wednesday, but also some outbreaks of rain starting to emerge towards the southwest. And this area of rain is going to slowly spread across some southern parts of England, into the Midlands perhaps, as well as South Wales by the afternoon. A lot of uncertainty about the track of the rainfall, so some error bars concerning its position. Wouldn't take the graphics too literally at this point, but nevertheless some fairly useful rainfall potentially for southern parts of England and Wales. Scotland, Northern England, Northern Ireland keep the sunny spells and showers, and it's a similar picture here on Thursday and Friday, turning drier and brighter meanwhile further south, and a fine weekend for many.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Look, as we pointed out to you yesterday, we're making a big thing of mental health because this week is Mental Health Awareness Week. What it's trying to do is just raise that awareness that 25% of people, that's 1 in 4 of you, will experience problems with your mental health.
Yeah, and that includes our next guest, Zach Smith. He's faced his own struggles with anxiety and depression, but he says speaking out can make all the difference. And Zach, I'm so pleased to say that you have decided to come and do that on our programme this morning. Welcome to you.
How are you? That's the first thing.
I'm very good today, thank you very much.
How bad was it?
It was really, really bad. The worst of it was sort of during the first lockdown when all the industry crashed for performers.
Well, just explain a little bit about what you do as a performer and what
Yeah.
people might recognise you from.
Yeah. So I'm a performer in the UK touring cast of Dream Boys, which is a male strip show.
Yeah, I used to be in that. It's one of those. Then I came here and did this.
There will always be a place for you there. So I'm a dancer and an acrobat and a lifestyle coach.
Right, so take us back then to that awful time, March 2020. We know that the performing arts really suffered, and you took that particularly badly.
Yeah, so I've always found sort of affirmation or like purpose from being on stage. I never knew really where I belonged, but whenever I was performing to anyone, it was always such like a rush and a high and that hit of affirmation. And when the industries crashed, I didn't really have anything to cling to, and I had a massive loss of identity, and I didn't get that adrenaline hit that I would get from being on stage, and then sort of started to look to other places for it. And I've always had a bit of an anxious disposition.
Have you?
Yeah, and in the past I've had problems with drugs growing up. just sort of leaving college, I was sort of smoking marijuana and things like that. Yeah. And then it was in the first lockdown where I fell heavily into cocaine because I was like reaching for a high to sort of replace.
So you then had two problems, right?
Yes.
So you had your anxiousness, a form of depression, and then you have the drug usage, which I presume you felt masked the first problem.
Exactly, yeah. It was all about avoidance, and, you know, I couldn't face what I was feeling. I didn't know how to deal with it. I hadn't sort of cracked communication or been able to ask for help, and people that I was trying to speak to around me were telling me that I didn't have a problem. So I was trying to ask for help, but maybe not directly enough, and people go, no, you're fine.
Or not knowing what your problem was.
Exactly.
Because the thing is, you're a good-looking boy, you're fit as a fiddle, you had a job, even on drugs.
Yeah.
There was a job there for you, so to the outside world, it was all okay.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point, is that on paper, my life probably looks pretty good and I'm in very, very good shape to take good care of myself, but it all comes from this anxious disposition I've always had about, you know, I got bullied when I was a child because I was really small, so then I got fixated on the gym. I've got a very addictive personality.
Sure.
So, like, I created this persona and found a job where it kind of worked to get the affirmation that I never had and all these things.
To me, so far, it all sounds as if you're getting away with it. So that's how you mask everything, through the drugs, through the gym, through the image, through the job.
Yeah.
Explain to me how bad it was, and when it was bad, how it affected you.
I mean, it was incredibly bad. There was a period in the lockdowns where I don't think I was sober for a good 3-4 weeks, like just day in, day out, spending all my money. I had savings. I spent all of my savings on drugs and things, and I was in such a state in my head that because I'd avoided it so much, I didn't see another way out. And, you know, I was getting to... I wanted a way out. It was getting to that sort of suicidal place of, I just can't do this anymore. I don't know what my life is without performing. And I felt like I was in a real rut. I didn't really know what to do.
What we're going to do is we're going to talk about how you got out of that rut, because it is Mental Health Awareness Week, and people will be listening to you and you'll be thinking, that was just like me. Maybe not the job, but, you know, the response to things that were happening. So we're going to return to this and what you did to get out of it and how you've turned things around, and hopefully things stay around, because we've got a government minister now who Isabel is going to speak to, and that is Kit Malthouse.
We do indeed, Eamonn, yes, and that is because later today the Prime Minister is going to unveil his legislative agenda, with 38 bills being announced in the Queen's speech, and included in the legislation that the government says will give police the powers they need to deal with a small minority of disruptive protesters, including Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil. So, as Eamonn mentioned, we can speak now to Kit Malthouse, who is the Crime and Policing Minister. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
How exactly are you going to be able to bring in these changes, and what will this measure involve?
So we're bringing a public order bill in off the back of the Police, Crime Courts and Sentencing Bill, which we put in place in the last session, to deal with some of the tactics that we've seen being used over the last couple of years, but most particularly lock-ons. This idea of activists gluing themselves to the road, or indeed to equipment like fuel gantries, which is often very dangerous and very difficult for the police to deal with. For the first time, that will become a specific offence that will attract a prison sentence and a limited fine. Similarly, we have seen key national infrastructure, you know, fuel depots, motorways, those kind of things being attacked, as well as printing presses. And we want to make that a specific offence, again, with a prison sentence and a fine. Also obstructing transport works. But particularly, we have seen a number of persistent offenders, if you like, who go out and do it again and again and again, notwithstanding what the courts do, basically cocking a snook at the rest of us. And so we're going to bring in a thing called a Serious Disruption Prevention Order, which we can put on them individually to restrict their activities. Look, we believe that the right to protest is fundamental to our democracy. It's absolutely right that you should be able to go out in the street, make as much noise and shout and scream about the issue. But you must do it in a way that balances everybody else's right to go about their business, and certainly doesn't put yourself or police officers in danger, as we have seen at fuel depots over the last few weeks. So that will be the bill that will be introduced shortly, and hopefully be announced. It will be announced in the Queen's speech later.
Look, you call it cocking a snoop at the rest of us. Look, plenty of our audience will agree with that. You know, hugely inconveniencing people up and down the country, as you described. But there are legitimate concerns that this kind of legislation will be a slippery slope, that the fundamental freedoms that are the backbone of Britain will be in some way undermined. Nobody wants to see us in a situation like we're seeing, for example, in Russia, where people who protest against the government of the day or whatever it might be end up in jail.
No, look, we agree that protest is absolutely fundamental, and we will fight tooth and nail to protect it. But protest is not an unqualified right. It has to be balanced against the rights of others to go about their business, or indeed not to be put in danger. So if you are a protester running out into the middle of a motorway, a busy motorway in rush hour, you're putting yourself and indeed others in danger. Now, we think that is crossing a line from a protest point of view. That is not carrying placards down Whitehall, trying to persuade the government to change its ways. That is a legitimate protest. The other is putting people in danger, and the police need powers to be able to deal with those specific offences. Similarly, we've just seen in the fuel depots people gluing themselves to fuel gantries, filled with flammable petrol, which is an incredibly dangerous thing to do, not just for them, but also for the police officers who have to go and remove them. And so dealing with the offence, making sure the police have got the powers to deter it so that protest becomes, much more what we had expected in the past from protest and able to make its point absolutely is a key part of the legislation.
No, I get your point, and I'm sorry to rush you. We only have limited time, and I just want to talk about levelling up. Front of the Express today, the Prime Minister says he will strive night and day to level up Britain, also mentioned in the Queen's speech today. Surely it'd be simpler just to bring out an emergency budget to undo some of the damage done by the previous one.
Well, look, what the Prime Minister has said over the last couple of days is notwithstanding the very difficult cost of living crisis which we're seeing, driven by these global fuel and commodity effects that are bringing a real challenge into people's homes up and down the land. We can't spend our way out of this problem. We've put £22 billion into support for people across the country, particularly those who are most challenged. But we do need to grow our way out of this. And so levelling up, growing all parts of the economy, building a high-skill, high-wage economy, getting people into those jobs has to be our future in the medium and long term. And I think that's what you'll see in the Queen's speech today. The Chancellor and the Prime Minister are monitoring the cost of living situation on a daily basis. And I know they're thinking about how they can be agile in response to that. But as we move towards a budget in the autumn, I think you'll see in the speech today some really assertive new measures to dynamise our economy, drive it forward so that in the medium term we can pay our bills both at home and as a nation.
OK, look, a final word I have to ask you about Sir Keir Starmer before I let you go. He's in deep water, isn't he?
Well, look, I'm not commenting on that situation. I'm policing minister. I wouldn't. Very unwise for me to comment on an ongoing police investigation. It's up to Keir Starmer.
You don't think he's hypocritical, given that he's been found to have lied? You don't think he's been hypocritical?
Well, that's a matter for the British people to decide. I've never been particularly censorious about the conduct of other MPs. I find it unhelpful to give people advice about how they should behave. He obviously doesn't agree with me. He's given lots of advice about how other people should behave. It's up to him to decide. And I'm sure the electorate will form a view as well.
OK, well, if he is fined, then let's go down the road of assuming this is all concluded. If he is fined, should he resign? He said he will. Is he right to do that?
Well, that's a matter for him. Look, my view is that this was a very difficult situation with complicated rules that were often changing quite quickly. If mistakes were made and they're acknowledged and fixed penalty notices are paid, I don't see why anybody, be they so high or so humble, should lose their job.
OK, Kit Malthouse, Crime and Policing Minister, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Mental Health Awareness Week, and we were having a conversation here with Zach Smith, who is a Dream Boy performer, and he was telling me about his whole battle with anxiety, how he took to drugs to mask the state of his mental health. So, Zach, that leaves us. Are you now in control? Are you cured? Or do you worry about this coming back every day, every week?
I'd definitely say I've got it under control. There is always going to be a worry. When you develop a trauma response like using drugs, anytime sort of something goes wrong in my life or I'm put in a high-stress environment, the triggers are there. Yeah. So it's a thing that always crops up in my brain, but I definitely have a way of managing it now And through open communication with an incredible partner I have, you know, I always take it to her first and we talk through things and she helps me manage myself. And sort of more recently, you know, with other things I've put in place in my life that safeguard me or give me structure or healthier choices, I find it easier to take a look at that.
And you've recognised you are ill and you are susceptible. And that would be very encouraging, I think, for a lot of people who maybe don't know where they are, what stage, or if there is anything wrong with them, and if so, what is wrong with them. So what would you say, as we are now in day 2 of Mental Health Awareness Week, what would you say to anyone watching or listening this morning and they're worried about their state of mind?
I think the main thing to take into consideration is firstly acceptance, and then asking for help is really, really important. I think communication is the most powerful thing because it can help you start to understand yourself. You know, if you can't ask yourself these questions, but you can at least accept that you have a problem, then when you bring that to someone else, they can help you find a bit of clarity and find a sort of plan to set in place. And there are things like Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and things where there are procedures to help you get on the right track.
Well, I'm glad it's worked for you, my friend. Keep well, keep smiling.
Thank you very much.
And keep on dancing.
Yeah, so powerful.
Good man.
So powerful for
Thank
a
you very
dream
much
boy
indeed.
to be speaking up, I think. Lots of role model for lots of young men. Great to hear that. Stay with us. We're going to take you through the papers after this short break. We're joined by Kate Hardcastle and Norman Baker. See you in a sec.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's 2 questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Your newspapers on this Tuesday morning. We do that in the company of Kate Hardcastle and Norman Baker. Very good to see you both, Norman. Let's begin with the eye here. This is page 7, and it says there's a government disagreement, and we're talking about UK government disagreement here. A cabinet split over the protocol and to get things moving in Northern Ireland.
Yes, a suggestion here, which I don't think is in the other papers, is that the Chancellor in particular and Michael Gove are blocking government attempts to take a hardline approach on the Northern Ireland Protocol. I mean, I think this has been bubbling away for quite a long time, but I think it may actually become quite serious. The DUP, in my view, have mishandled the situation politically quite badly, because they insisted on Brexit. They insisted then that the government come to an agreement with the EU on the protocol, which was duly enforced, and then they decided they don't like it. And last week, of course, they got a big cold. They caught a cold when Sinn Féin came top of the poll. The Alliance Party did very well at their expense. So this is not going to sort itself out. But, I mean, I'm really worried if we don't have an agreement on this, some shape or form, then we're going to end up with more unrest in Northern Ireland, and potentially a poll.
What we see, so being from Northern Ireland, you look at this and you say, right, Michael Gove and Rishi Sunak, they're basically saying, hey guys, let's not get caught with spoiling it for all of us just because of what's happening in Northern Ireland. They're looking at what they would see is the bigger picture.
I think that's right, and it's easy for me, perhaps, in England to look at this in a different way from people in Northern Ireland, but it seems to me the DUP is holding everybody to ransom in a way that, is not acceptable. Their vote's gone down. They haven't got a vote of confidence in the population at large, and yet they want to dictate terms, refuse to enter into the agreement to run Stormont.
Yeah. So the idea being UK government should be harder or more non-negotiable with DUP than stuffing the protocol.
Well, I mean, what everyone thinks about Brexit, the British government came to an agreement with the EU, Boris Johnson's agreement with the EU, on the Northern Ireland Protocol.
Okay.
Put the border down the Irish Sea. Yeah. That's what they agreed to.
And the majority of people in Northern Ireland, correct me if I'm wrong, are in favour of the protocol, even in spite of everything. So.
I think that's right. And actually, the protocol allowed the position, in theory, that Northern Ireland had a unique position to be able to trade freely with the South and with Britain at the same time.
OK. We go to the Times. Kate, this is an interesting story. Tech companies say they will phase out passwords for logging into devices. One of the biggest irritations of my life.
Yeah.
I was watching something, nothing naughty or anything. What the heck was it? It was something, I don't know, it was something like Dairy Girls or something like that. And my Sky box asked me for a PIN number. It was just a new box put in, but it's in the loft in the house, right? And it says, what's your PIN? I don't know what my PIN number is. I don't care what it is.
Use the same number and they go, oh, sorry, you used the same PIN too many times.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so, we'll all be delighted with this, Kate.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's progress. They're talking about the giants coming together and saying, yes, work in progress, but we need to find not just a way of making sure that everything via Bluetooth they're looking at would be uniform so that you go into your shopping app or you go into your viewing subscription and you can see the same. But in fact, that it wouldn't be passcode moderated at all, that there would be just some technical way of basically recognising who you are and getting in. Now, most people with a smartphone know that they've used fingerprints, face technology, that type of thing anyway.
Iris recognition.
This is going to go really into the tech sphere, but thank goodness, from a retail perspective alone, the amount of what we call basket drops, people who just get rid of the baskets and don't progress with the purchase because they get frustrated with that password capture issue.
Yes.
Also, this will actually start to make a big shift with security, which I think will then enable a lot of people, reassure a lot of people. We're also talking about these tech giants coming together and looking at ways, which we talked about last time, about electricals being recycled, which I think is a massive thing. Who wants to have to buy a new charger every time you get a new piece of electrical goods? So I'm really positive that these conversations are happening, not soon enough, but we're making progress.
OK. Norman, let's finish this brief paper review then on this story in the Times. Talking of finishing things off, this is in the Times, page 32.
An extraordinary story. This is about a novelist who's written an essay called How to Murder Your Husband, who's now been charged with, guess what, murdering her husband.
Shouldn't laugh, sorry, it's just the irony of the story.
Took the police some time to work out who the criminal might be. I suppose it's fair to say that she hasn't been convicted of anything yet, just for the your lawyers. But she has also apparently made claims on 10 life insurance policies after her husband's death. So it doesn't look as though... Well, I mean, it may be that fiction is stranger than fact.
Isn't it?
Well, Norman, Kate, thank you both very much indeed. I really appreciate that. They'll be back soon. So it is 10 minutes, coming up to 10 minutes to 9 o'clock.
We're going to talk now about airports. Thousands of passengers flying from Birmingham and Manchester have been forced to wait in long queues outside for several hours as the travel industry continues to suffer from staff shortages. In July, the West Midlands will welcome more than 1 million spectators for the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham, and many will be using the airport. And our reporter Will Hollis has been there.
Lightheaded long before even lifting off the ground, thousands of passengers were forced to wait for hours in dizzying queues outside Birmingham Airport yesterday. Some called it chaos. Staff say it was all part of the plan.
Today was an exceptionally busy morning for us. This morning, obviously, a large amount of people going away on travelling. So the queues were downstairs, but we took a conscious decision this morning to take the queue outside to make sure that it didn't tangle up with other important airport functions at the check-in process. Because if that would have happened, that would have created more challenges for us as an airport. So we took a conscious decision to ask passengers to queue outside.
The aviation industry is struggling under the rapidly returning demand for foreign travel, but cracks caused by the pandemic remain. Nearly half the staff here were made redundant during COVID. The airport says it's recruiting now, but jobs industry-wide are empty. It means some passengers were left stranded, missing their flights.
There were a handful of people who did miss, but what we do as an airport is making sure that they are rebooked and provided with that onward travel, and any difference in that cost is picked up by the airport.
The picture seen today will send shivers down most passengers' spines, but long queues can be expected in many different airports throughout the summer.
Manchester and Heathrow are struggling too, but the aviation industry is confident it can deliver this summer.
Incrementally, every day and every week, the queues will be more manageable for us to ensure that we can return to provide that great customer service that Birmingham has done in the past and will do again in the future.
Will Hollis for GB News in the West Midlands.
Well, it's only 23 days until the Queen's Jubilee, which is sort of just a slightly shorter wait than you would have if you were queuing at Birmingham and Manchester airports. But anyway, tributes to Her Majesty are being thought of and created and pouring in all the time.
Yes, and the artist Ben Mosley, whose fans include Mike Tyndall, of course married to Zara, Princess, doesn't use her royal title, but anyway, and Ed Sheeran as well, the pop star, has painted a portrait of the Queen for Hello magazine to commemorate her reign in this Platinum Jubilee year.
Well, the editor-in-chief of Hello magazine, Rosie Nixon, joins us now, together with the artist himself, Ben Mosley, and we can show you his creation for the Jubilee, and stunning it is, I have to say. It's not traditional for people,
modern
Ben.
Interpretation.
Yes, and a very nice interpretation. Tell us what you put into it or what you're trying to reflect here.
Well, it's a reflection of Her Majesty's life. I wanted to use 24-karat gold because I think that's synonymous with grandeur and monarchs, and it adds a richness to the piece. And I wanted to make it look like a stained glass window with different elements and milestones of her life, really, that people could have a look at. And
so what can we spot in there, then, when you're talking about milestones in her life? I can see Buckingham Palace in one corner and I can see some guards men, but what else could you draw out? I think there's corgis in there somewhere. I'm looking for them, but I can't spot them. Oh, there they are, on the left-hand side.
That's right, yeah. So basically just different things related to the 70 years that the Queen's been in. So you've got, obviously, the marriage, and then you've got the guards and Buckingham Palace, and then the Royal Cipher.
Oh, yeah.
So it was just a case of trying to do as many different things as I could that related to the Queen in my style, you know, and it was about creating an experience that the viewer could look at in my way, really.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Rosie, Ben has created the image. What are you going to do with it from the magazine's perspective?
Well, I mean, isn't it beautiful? It's the first time that I've seen it in the flesh, and it's really blown me away this morning. It's just stunning. So, I mean, really, my main, idea around this is for as many people to see it and enjoy it as possible. So we've got it in the magazine this week as a centrefold. So we're encouraging our audience to take it out of the magazine, put it in your window, show your support for the Queen, and then we've got plans to gift it to Her Majesty, so that it will hopefully either appear in the Royal Collection or maybe we will auction it and then put those funds to perhaps the Queen's Commonwealth Trust or one of the charities close to her heart.
Bet she hasn't got too many that look like that.
I know, it's almost like a stained glass window effect, don't you think?
And she's smiling in it, which is nice.
Well, I wanted to make her a young Queen. I mean, she was obviously a really beautiful Queen, so, trying to capture that, and obviously all the milestones in her life was important. It's an honour, really, to depict our greatest monarch, our longest-serving honour.
Look, we started by talking about some of your high-profile fans. Do you feel a bit of pressure knowing that the royals will be looking at your work, and do you get feedback from them?
Well, it's an honour. I mean, obviously, I think they're a bit too busy to be giving me feedback, but it's just nice to be able to do what I love and sell my work for a living and live the dream of an artist. It's tough, but I love doing it. It's
Rosie, from your point of view, it's interesting that you're doing this. What will be in the middle of the magazine, will it, or do you?
Yeah, in the middle
out?
of the magazine, so you could pull it out.
Yeah.
But we've also produced some merchandise.
Well, let's see.
A T-shirt. There's a cushion with the design on, which I've
People
ordered
just love
myself.
royal merchandise, don't they? And the hello brand. It's sort of very much a hello thing,
Yeah,
isn't
something
it?
to really keep. I mean, the cushion is absolutely stunning with this image on it.
The
So I'll be
cushion.
having that on my sofa.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, to remember this moment in history.
Well, I think what's nice is, I mean, today we're all a bit worried. We'll say, what is wrong with the Queen? Why is she not doing the opening of Parliament? And it appears from here on in she will do less rather than more, and hopefully she'll still be okay. But I mean, here this is something happy. This is something joyous, which is what this Platinum Jubilee should be.
Yeah, I think it's the chance for everybody in the nation to show our appreciation to the Queen. This 70 years of service is quite extraordinary, and this is a time when we can all go out and show her how much she means to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ben, how long did it take you to do this? We're watching you working away there.
Well, it took me between 7 to 10 sort of days, but I mean, obviously getting it filmed, I've got a film guy that I work with called Anthony. He does a really good job filming it and editing my work all the time.
Oh, look at that.
That's the gold leaf going on. 24 carat gold leaf?
He's amazing, and basically, obviously with him filming, I have to try and do things differently. It's a bit more stop-start because obviously you want to try and capture the best shots. So
Rosie, what if you hadn't have liked it?
There was a slightly nervous moment when Ben told me he'd completed the artwork and it was shown to me, but I just fell in love with it immediately. It's so original. I mean, and it sparkles, it shines, it's a different depiction. I think we all like something that's going to be eye-catching and a bit different.
And Rosie, you had the idea to ask Ben to do this when you saw him doing exactly what we were seeing on that screen at a charity event, and you saw firsthand for yourself, pure talent.
Yes, I was at a Young Lives versus Cancer fundraising event at the end of last year, and I saw Ben live painting, which he often does at auction events, and it was just incredible. He created this sort of stunning piece of art that then sold for tens of thousands of pounds for the charity. And we had a little chat together there and sort of came up with this idea together. So it's been a delightful project to work on. Ben's a great guy, really talented, and it's been a real honour to work with him.
Well, wherever your portrait goes, long may she look over us. And really good for you, I suppose, Ben, to be contributing to this Jubilee. I hope you get the right result where you want in Her Majesty's collections.
It's been an honour, and thank you, Rosie. You've been brilliant, honestly.
We hope that Her Majesty will get to enjoy it.
Yeah, and look, if you at home want to enjoy it, remember you can buy this week's Hello magazine, have a little copy for yourself, or indeed buy some of the merchandise. Lots of it, I believe.
Yeah, all available on the Hello website.
On the Hello website, good stuff. OK, thank you so much, Rosie Nixon, Editor-in-Chief of Hello, and Ben Mosley, the expressionist artist behind this absolute masterpiece. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
More royal things to talk about after the break. We've got the royal editor of Vanity Fair, Katie Nicholl, in studio to talk about the Queen and her non-appearance in Parliament after this.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, but to the point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
The Queen will not attend the state opening of Parliament for the first time in almost 60 years.
Hello, a very good morning. Good to see you. It's just after 9 o'clock. It's Tuesday, the 10th of May. Thanks for your company. You're tuned in to breakfast here in GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Buckingham Palace has confirmed that the Queen will not attend the state opening of Parliament today due to so-called episodic mobility problems. Prince Charles will instead give the speech on behalf of his mother.
The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has stated that he will resign if he is fined over Beergate, as his party prepares to hand over text logs and documents to Durham police.
The Prime Minister Boris Johnson's vowed to strive night and day to level up Britain ahead of the state opening of Parliament. A legislative programme of 38 bills will be unveiled this morning, including proposals to drive up skills and do away with remaining EU red tape.
And thanks for taking part in all our stories today, because if they matter to you, they matter to us. This is GB News, the People's Channel. You can tweet us at GB News. It was only the third time in her reign. The other times was because she was pregnant. Well, the Queen will miss the state opening of Parliament. So Prince Charles will instead stand in her place. Let's talk to the royal commentator from Vanity Fair, the royal editor and author, Katie Nicholl, on this one. It looks as though this is now the way it's going to be from here on in. It'll be, don't expect to see Her Majesty, but if she turns up, it's a bonus.
I think so, which is worrying, isn't it, with the Platinum Jubilee celebrations? I know you just done a segment on it, coming up in just a few weeks' time. I mean, I don't think there can be any certainty that we're going to see her prominently at this. I mean, it must have been, I think, a very painful decision for the Queen at the 11th hour to have pulled out of today's state opening of Parliament. As head of state, it is the most important constitutional role. It's presenting her government's legislation. It is what she does as Queen. And I think the significance of that empty throne today, while the crown is there, and of course Charles won't be sitting in that seat, it almost feels like a shot of what the future's going to look like, doesn't it?
It's a passing of the baton, isn't it?
It is.
A historic moment, I suppose you could say. And will we ever see her doing another state opening of Parliament will be the big question.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, as well, when you think about the last time she did it, which was a year ago, just a few weeks after the passing of the Duke of Edinburgh, I remember watching it. It had been scaled down because of COVID. She wasn't wearing the big, heavy crown. There were modifications to make it easier for her, but it was still quite remarkable that just a few weeks after her husband's death, she was doing it. Should we be that surprised that at 96, with mobility problems and everything else, she's not? But she is our Queen. This is something we expect her to do.
Yeah, I do think it's an evolution rather than a revolution, really, when you look at it. And it is something we should all accept, we should all get used to. And we are looking at the future there with Charles and William.
Yeah, I'm curious, though, why Her Majesty seems reticent, or perhaps those around her seem reticent, to let her be seen to be frail. I think she is the nation's grandmother in many ways. Lots of people have mobility issues in their mid-90s. Would it be the end of the world if she was wheeled up to the front of Parliament to open it today?
Well, it's very interesting because I actually have a friend who is in a wheelchair who said that wouldn't it be wonderful for the less abled community to see the Queen like that? I think it's partly a generational thing. She has always been head of state. She's embodied strength, continuity, dignity. I find it hard to imagine that she's going to want to do that. Of course, there's that image as well of her sister, Princess Margaret, in the wheelchair, which is something that will be very personal for the Queen. I think she wants to be seen to be standing, to be strong, to be as we've always seen her. But inevitably, we are seeing, I think, a handover of power in real time. And, you know, the Prince of Wales is going to do a very good job today. He's had plenty of time to watch, to learn. And isn't it interesting that we're going to have the Duke of Cambridge there? They're there because they are councillors of state. And the Queen had to issue a letters patent to enable them to be there for the state opening of Parliament. But you're really seeing what the future of the monarchy is going to look like. You've got Charles flanked by Camilla, the Duchess of Cornwall, and the Duke of Cambridge. This is the image of the future. It's a strange time to be in.
Oh, to be a fly on the wall in Windsor Castle today when this starts and the Queen's sitting in her comfy chair with a blanket over her knee.
Watching it,
calling for a butler to get her a milk digestive or whatever and a cup of tea.
Well, I think that
she'll be sitting there saying, "Thank goodness I'm not there today."
well, very possibly, and you know, let's hope Charles gets a phone call after saying, "Well, you did a very good job, son," because we are seeing him do more. I mean, if you think back just a couple of weeks ago to the Maundy service, he stood in for the Queen at that, again at the 11th hour. Since, I think it's 2017, he's been laying that wreath at the cenotaph. So when you think about it, he has been taking on more. It's just this moment feels so significant because she has always done it, as Eamonn, you said, for 60 years, apart from when she was pregnant. So.
Katie, this really interests me. Obviously, just a few weeks ago when we had her late husband's memorial, we saw all the European royals descending into London, didn't we? Perhaps, I think, the Dutch ones. And they had the abdication there, didn't they? There's been lots of abdications across Europe.
In Europe, it's quite common.
Right. So
and it makes sense.
So why is it almost like a taboo thing to even suggest it here? We're seeing a regency, essentially, with Charles, aren't we? But abdication, can't even talk about it. But yet it's done and accepted on the continent.
It is, and as the Queen said, typical of the Dutch. But you have to look at her personal situation. When her uncle abdicated, not only did it thrust her into the line of succession, it almost undermined the entire constitution and the future of the royal family. It was such a destabilising moment. I think her feeling is, not on my watch. Right. And at the moment, she's not needing to abdicate. This is working. It's us that have to get our heads around it.
You're right, it's us. I mean, she's hardly thrusting Charles unprepared.
He's ready for this.
How old is he? 72 now, is he, or something?
He's older than that. And he's the longest-serving Prince of Wales. And
give him a chance.
Quite capable of doing this. But I think that idea, once you start to unpick at the Constitution, once you go down the abdication route, well, who's to say, well, let's just get rid of the monarchy altogether? You almost undermine the stability of the entire institution. And I think, Isabel, her religious vows, those coronation vows, and the fact that she used the anniversary of her accession back in February to renew that vow to serve, it means everything to her.
It just means that when she does turn up at Jubilee events, there will be a bigger round of applause and appreciation, I would have thought.
I think it'll be really quite an emotional moment, and she's determined to be there for that balcony moment, obviously for the service of Thanksgiving. But, you know, I think it's going to be a case of decisions will be made on the day, and we're just going to have to be patient. But as you say, I think there'll be a lot of applause when we do see her.
And can I just ask you what your interpretation of episodic mobility problems is?
Well, my understanding is that there are days when she just cannot move. So she'll have good days, and we saw her, didn't we, meeting the President of Switzerland. She's standing up without a stick and she looked brilliant. But it may be that 2 days later she cannot move. And I think anyone with those sorts of issues, you just don't know. And it's that uncertainty, which is why I think we're being prepared to not see her. But if we do, it's going to be a pleasant surprise. And please, God, that happens for the Jubilee moment.
Well, it's a pleasant surprise for us now to see our political correspondent, Tom Harwood. Tom, down outside Parliament, he's at College Green now at Westminster, getting ready there for that state opening of Parliament. What can you tell us, Tom?
Well, yes, it's just a couple of hours now until Prince Charles rolls up to the Lord's entrance behind me at Parliament, of course, to deliver that Queen's speech. And, of course, this is the legislative agenda that the government will be following for the next year or so. We're expecting some multi-year programmes in there as well. Many people are saying that this is really the last big opportunity that the government has to set forward what it actually wants to do in power, because by this time next year we'll be really running up to a general election. That long campaign may well be beginning quietly, running up to a general election perhaps in 2024. So if the government really wants to get things done and have time for its changes to bed in, this moment, today, is what it's all about. And we're expecting 38 individual bills, items of legislation covering everything from deporting foreign criminals to building more houses in a way that fits with communities up and down the country. There are going to be programmes for economic development, potentially for dealing with the cost of living, although we understand no immediate specific measures, more likely to be long-term economic ideas. This is going to be an expansive speech, and it will be fascinating to listen to in just a couple of hours' time.
Yes, we had Kit Malthouse on just a little while ago. He was talking about one of the measures that's being outlined today in the Queen's speech, but perhaps one of his most interesting answers was on the question of Beergate. Sir Keir Starmer really reluctant to comment at all on that, Tom.
Yes, it's interesting that the Conservative Party really want to be consistent, I suppose, with their argument that a fixed penalty notice, something that some people have compared to in the past as a similar offence to a parking fine, something that doesn't mean criminal guilt, but does mean that you acknowledge potential wrongdoing and pay a small fine. Now, in the eyes of the Conservative Party, that shouldn't be the grounds for a resignation of a senior political office, although clearly in the eyes of the Labour Party it should be grounds for resignation. So we see this clear and, to be fair, consistent distinction, although of course there have been some other inconsistencies with our politicians as well. Of course, it took 3 days for the leader of the Labour Party to announce that he would resign were he given a fixed penalty notice. But equally, that whole rigmarole yesterday, the back and forth, the briefing to the press, the cancellation of events and Q&As, only to end up with a very limited statement in front of just 3 members of the press. Very few other people allowed in to question Sir Keir Starmer. A tight operation around that announcement. It does leave some more questions than answers, because of course a fixed penalty notice and an absolute clearing of Sir Keir Starmer are not the only 2 options. It's not a binary choice that Durham Police have before them. Durham Police could easily issue a statement that they think that potentially some rules may have been broken, but it doesn't meet the bar that they themselves set to issue a fixed penalty notice. What happens then? Would Sir Keir Starmer resign? Well, that's exactly what happens to Dominic Cummings, of course, back in 2020 when Durham Constabulary issued a statement exactly along those lines, issuing no fixed penalty notice. At the time, Sir Keir Starmer said that Dominic Cummings must resign for that statement, and yet he doesn't seem to be committing to himself resign if Durham Constabulary issue him with a similar statement. This police investigation is one that now carries incredible political importance. One of the country's smallest police forces now has the hands of the job of not only the leader of Her Majesty's opposition, but also the deputy leader of the opposition. The Durham Police now can say whether they go on in their jobs or not. It's an extraordinary, weighty pressure.
OK, Tom, I know you're going to be back in around 15 minutes' time with your own programme, The Briefing. Just remind people at home what time they can expect to see Prince Charles or Prince William at the Palace of Westminster behind you.
Well, everything will be getting going from 11:30, but there will be arrivals and more paraphernalia going on before then. So I would quite frankly advise anyone watching to not switch off your TV set for the next 3 hours. It's going to be a big and important day here in Westminster.
Yeah, good advice, Tom. And amongst that paraphernalia, of course, the Crown. We're expecting the Crown to be there as well. Tom Harwood, thanks very much. Do stay with us, though, here on Breakfast. We'll be back after the break with all the latest showbiz news, including which former I'm a Celeb campmate might be returning to the jungle. See you in a sec.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A cloudy and damp start for some across England and Wales, but that cloud and rain will clear through the morning, replaced by sunny spells, but also some fairly lively showers in the north. At the moment, we've got a couple of areas of low pressure to the north and northwest of the UK. They've been sending weather fronts in from the northwest. It was a wet day yesterday for Scotland and Northern Ireland. That rain is now across central and southern parts of England, but really is a weakening feature. So the rain more or less petering out, very little as the front clears East Anglia and the southeast. Sunny spells then follow, and for the south and southeast, mostly it's just a fine afternoon with warm sunshine, 20-21 Celsius possible towards the southeast. But scattered showers for parts of Wales and northern England, and some very lively downpours for Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it will feel cooler, 15 to 17 Celsius here. And those showers turning into longer spells of rain, I think, through the evening across western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well. So an unsettled night to come for Scotland, for Northern England, Northern Ireland. Drier and clearer for a time further south, but even in the south we'll see clouds thickening, 12 Celsius at dawn on Wednesday, but also some outbreaks of rain starting to emerge towards the southwest. And this area of rain is going to slowly spread across some southern parts of England, into the Midlands perhaps, as well as South Wales by the afternoon. A lot of uncertainty about the track of the rainfall, so some error bars concerning its position. Wouldn't take the graphics too literally at this point, but nevertheless some fairly useful rainfall potentially for southern parts of England and Wales. Scotland, Northern England, Northern Ireland keep the sunny spells and showers, and it's a similar picture here on Thursday and Friday, turning drier and brighter meanwhile further south, and a fine weekend for many.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you. Brazier is drive time for radio and TV. It's fast, it's punchy, it's opinionated, there's a Brazier angle and a little bit of levity.
That's the question. That's two questions, actually.
That's Brazier, Monday to Thursday, 4 till 6 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you, or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday, for To The Point on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. It's 9:18. We're going through all the top showbiz stories for you this morning, joined by the very lovely Stephanie Tetch. You've got the colour memo, I'm pleased to say. Somebody told you we're all in yellow.
It's obligatory in here.
And definitely. Please let me know what to wear next week.
I hope the weather lives up to it.
Same here. That's why I wore yellow.
So, come countdown. Anne Robinson says, not for me, I'm off here. and certainly, in the short term at least, my fellow Northern Irishman, Colin Murray.
Yes, so it's good news for him. So he's already started filming because of Anne's departure. So he will be here until the autumn recording.
He has done it before.
Yeah, he has. He stepped in for Nick Hewer last year, where he filmed 33 episodes, and he's really passionate about the show. He said it's been a dream for him since he was like 5 years old. And there's good news for viewers because he actually gets on with Rachel Riley as well, so there won't be no clashing.
Oh, that's a novelty. That's
so
good.
That's a plus, definitely, indeed.
He'll definitely keep the job in that case. I think she seems to rule the roost. I don't know.
Well, Anne did want an older woman to be her replacement, but it seems like Colin is the man for the job, and it's all about who can do the best job. So good luck.
Yeah,
to
I
him
mean,
with
Colin is an enthusiast for it, it has to be said, but I do think it would be nice to see an Esther Ranson or... No, and no?
Me personally, I just think because of how the dynamic was the last time with Rachel Riley and co with Anne, I don't know.
They replace Rachel Riley, that might be the idea.
Eamonn.
Could you imagine that job? Could you imagine doing those numbers and things?
Oh, no, I think Rachel Riley's the woman for the job, it'll be hard to replace her.
Here's my idea.
Yeah.
Carol Vorderman as the host.
I think she should be on, definitely. Carol gets my vote of approval. I think she'll do a really good job with it. And she knows how it works. Well, she came out like a week ago and she said that she would be honoured if they asked her to do the job again. So why make it work?
Speaking of the new people in positions, Nachuti Gatwa, our new Doctor Who. Amazing personal story and personal journey, having fled the genocide in Rwanda to Scotland, and now talking about opening a school in his country of origin.
Yeah, he said it at the BAFTA TV Awards, like, everyone's excited, obviously, because he's now been announced as the new Doctor Who, but he says more than anything, with all the money he's making now from all these TV roles, Doctor Who, Sex Education, he wants to go back to Rwanda and build a school. He said it's all about giving back, and with his money now, he says he has the opportunity to invest back in Rwanda, which I think is amazing, because I think a lot of, people who come from war-torn countries, sometimes you come to England, you start a new life and you can forget about your roots, and clearly roots is where his heart lies.
Yeah, very good. Brittany, now you've been waiting to get your teeth into this one. This is a big story and developing overnight.
Yeah, we've been talking about Mental Health Awareness Week, and Brittany's fans are worried about... Sorry. Brittany's fans...
Sorry, look,
sorry, thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, but anyway, what you're saying there is...
Brittany's fans have been worried about her because last night she posted up 6 nude pictures of her, full frontal, and I know people have been celebrating her freedom since...
I mean, when you say nude, are you talking that nude? Are you talking nude?
Head to toe with only a heart emoji covering her modesty.
Right.
And she was saying, people are saying, like, look, she's had her freedom from her conservatorship, but this is going a bit too far, especially as she's about to become a mother for the 3rd time. She keeps on exposing herself on Instagram. And it's a bit trashy.
It's a bit trashy, but it doesn't mean she should have her conservatorship reinstated. I mean, goodness me, that was like forbidding her from doing anything, wiping her own... she didn't do anything. Exactly, her face.
But I think people are saying it's a cry for help more than anything, because it's like, how long can she keep on doing this? Like, how long can she keep on exposing herself? Is there something else going behind all of this? And,
what is the message she's sending?
Well, to young girls who are following her, like, have your freedom, but have respect for yourself, for your body as well.
Oh, come on, the Kardashians do the same thing every other day.
No, but Kim doesn't go fully naked. She has a bikini on. She'll have a bikini on.
She's done the full works. They all have. I think, I don't know.
Are you in favour of Brittany getting her kit off?
No, but I just think people make a lot of money from getting their kit off every single day, whether we like it or not, whether it's in music videos, whether it's inside newspapers, whether it's on Instagram. And just because Brittany has had this checkered past, we're giving her grief for it. And I think, yes, she obviously has some problems, but is it down to her getting naked? Probably not.
Well, you say probably not. I mean, people will look and they'll see an obvious... I mean, I think to a lot of people, they'll happily join up the dots, won't they?
Yeah, I mean, look, it doesn't mean I'm not worried about her, but I just think people do it all the time, so why are we giving her a space?
Yeah, she wants to have her freedom, and clearly this is how she chooses to express it. But, again, what comes with it is people are going to be saying there's something wrong with Brittany, and especially as now she's heading to have a 3rd child. I don't know if that's distasteful.
At the weekend, I was watching a documentary on Netflix about Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of parallels with mental health that were never really brought out in public about her. And yet, overnight there was an auction for an Andy Warhol painting of her, which went for a world record for a piece of art.
$195 million.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right. For a piece of art with Marilyn Monroe. And as I was listening to this on the radio, I was coming in, I passed a bathroom showroom.
Yeah.
And there was the biggest, and I mean biggest, it wouldn't fit into this room, portrait of Marilyn Monroe in the background to all these baths or whatever, which shows that even today, 50, 60 years on, she is so relevant.
Iconic.
She is.
But there was no one there to help her. All they did was keep giving her pills.
Yeah.
And people used and abused her. And
well,
whatever.
this is the thing that bugs me about celebrity culture, because I think we forget they're humans and we kind of make them just a bit of a spectacle. It's not until something goes wrong, everyone will be like, oh, we saw the signs. But, you know, they are humans, and humans, we are fragile. But celebrities, I just feel like, for me, I've interviewed a lot of them, and I think sometimes you realise that they don't even exist as a person anymore. They just see themselves as a product to appease the public.
To make money.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one. It brings back an interview I did with Brittany once that she just was disinterested. And it's funny you use the term, they see themselves as a product. She had to be there. She had to promote her film that she was in. And she obviously didn't want to be there. And... you know, so interesting, all very good. Stephanie, thank you, a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Lovely
much
to
indeed.
see you. We're going to hand over to Tom Harwood. He's going to be in Westminster all day. Keep your telly tuned this way because it's a big day.
I won't be here for the next week in case you're looking for me, but Stephen will be. Stephen Dixon with Isabel for the rest of the week and into next week. I'll see you next Wednesday. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hello, very good morning to you. I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. A cloudy and damp start for some across England and Wales, but that cloud and rain will clear through the morning, replaced by sunny spells, but also some fairly lively showers in the north. At the moment, we've got a couple of areas of low pressure to the north and northwest of the UK. They've been sending weather fronts in from the northwest. It was a wet day yesterday for Scotland and Northern Ireland. That rain is now across central and southern parts of England, but really is a weakening feature. So the rain more or less petering out, very little as the front clears East Anglia and the southeast. Sunny spells then follow, and for the south and southeast, mostly it's just a fine afternoon with warm sunshine, 20-21 Celsius possible towards the southeast. But scattered showers for parts of Wales and northern England, and some very lively downpours for Scotland and Northern Ireland, where it will feel cooler, 15-17 Celsius here. And those showers turning into longer spells of rain, I think, through the evening across western Scotland, parts of Northern Ireland as well. So an unsettled night to come for Scotland, for Northern England, Northern Ireland. Drier and clearer for a time further south, but even in the south we'll see clouds thickening, 12 Celsius at dawn on Wednesday, but also some outbreaks of rain starting to emerge towards the southwest. And this area of rain is going to slowly spread across some southern parts of England, into the Midlands perhaps, as well as South Wales by the afternoon. A lot of uncertainty about the track of the rainfall, so some error bars concerning its position. Wouldn't take the graphics too literally at this point, but nevertheless some fairly useful rainfall potentially for southern parts of England and Wales. Scotland, Northern England, Northern Ireland keep the sunny spells and showers, and it's a similar picture here on Thursday and Friday, turning drier and brighter meanwhile further south, and a fine weekend for many.
Tonight on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes & Kerr.
On radio, they call it the drive time slot, 4 p.m. until 6 p.m. as listeners head home. It's that part of the schedule when the dust of the day's events begin to clarify, and we try to make sense of it for you.